Hello again, friends, and welcome back to another edition of Jim Cornette's Drive Thru right here. A day or two or however many days later than it usually is, wherever you are. It's a sad occasion. Of course, the morning of AEW Dynamite. We usually don't broadcast right before one of these broadcasts, but I'm rambling because I'm sick. Let's get to the star of the show. I'm the host, the great Brian Last. Here he is, Mr. Technology, Jim Cornette.
God damn it, it's been 48 hours. You've completely forgotten how to do this shit?
Yeah.
What the hell?
I don't know what happened.
Oh my God. Here I was. Yes, we're late and we'll explain that, but here I was ready to go. I'm free from the bonds of uninformation. I am once again hooked up to the world and I was ready to go. I was going to roll. I go, whoo, Messy, handsome Jimmy is ready to rock and roll, baby. Whoo, because I've had the rockin' pneumonia and the boogie woogie flu. Whoo, Messy. That's kind of stuff. But here you've just completely thrown this thing into the shitter right at the start here. Do you do it again? Just do it again. You don't want to do it again?
I'm trying to do it again. You just interrupted me when I was trying to do it.
Well, do it again.
Hello again, friends. Mercy! And you are our friends. And welcome to Jim Cornette's Drive Thru. I'm the great Brian Last, and here he is, Mr. Technology, Jim Cornette.
There you go.
Well, there's my energy for the day.
Oh. All right. Yeah. Oh. Yeah, there you go. And fuck that chair. Listen. All right. This is actually the show we're going to put out, right? All right, so I guess we'll get to it. Here's the problem, ladies and gentlemen, that we are a couple of days late. Do you know this, Brian? Have you read about this? Have you heard this talked about on television? We have Wi-Fi all around us. In our homes, in our hotels, in our public buildings and spaces. Wi-Fi is all around us. We don't see it. We can't smell it. We can't feel it. We don't know it's there, but it's there. Oh, it's there. It's there. It's lurking. It's lurking. Lulling us into a false sense of security with its presence, lulling us into a false sense of knowledge and entertainment and connection to the world with the smack that it pours into our brainal veins. What? And then suddenly, the veins in our brainal veins. Work with me. I'm working here. And then suddenly it's taken away. And we're jonesing. We're jonesing for the Wi-Fi that we become addicted to because it's being beamed. I think it's the government. The government is beaming this Wi-Fi to all of our homes and all of our spaces so that we get addicted to it. We get hooked on being connected to all this stuff. Back before I knew what was going on every day in the world, because you couldn't find out unless you watched the 6 o'clock news, I didn't care what was going on. Now I don't know what's going on, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on? So the government is sending this into our places, Brian, so that they can torment us in some fashion. That's what it is. I guarantee you that's what. Anyway, you got Wi-Fi in your house too, by the way. It's all around us.
We have the internet, and of course we have Wi-Fi here, correct?
Yeah, well, I didn't have some Wi-Fi Sunday night. That's what started this whole thing, apparently. And this is not something that I particularly utilize on a regular basis, this Wi-Fi, but this has been going on for some time here in the castle. I told you that time they had to call the shortest electrician on their squad to be able to get into the crawl space in between my attics to run a cable all the way up from the other end of the house to my office, because the Wi-Fi, when we moved in, I never dreamed I would have a computer. Because what would I want with a computer? Well, this was 2004, right? So we had to, because Stacy already had a computer, so we had the computer fucking Jack put on her wall in her office, which is on the far west wing of Castle Cornette. Whereas the Fortress of Solitude here, my office, is on the upper floor of the far east wing. Therefore, we wanted Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi would take care of the problem as they can just bounce the Y from her end of the house over to my end, right? Well, that wasn't working. And so we got the guy out. He said, oh, well, you see, here's what it is. You're expecting this signal to go about 120 feet, not only straight that away, pointing upwards and slightly east, but you're also wanting it to go through that big, giant metal air conditioning unit in the attic behind your office, as well as you're wanting it to go through the roof and go out of the house and then come back into the house again. He said, that's too much. You got to bounce that bastard, right? So then we had a thing where it's set on the, I don't remember whether this was the Geek Squad or the Goof Squad or one of the shade tree technologists that's been out here over the years. But we had a thing sitting on our top of our refrigerator down in the kitchen, which is about halfway. It's on the first floor rather than the second floor or the third floor, but it's halfway in between where the wire comes in for the internet and my office. So it was supposed to be bouncing shit. It had a nice blue light on the top of it. It was very soothing when you'd walk in the kitchen, at night, and you'd see that soothing blue light. It was plugged into the wall. But the thing was, apparently we had that for about a year or more, and then her father was visiting one time and said, hey, really that's not doing anything. What? Because it's not connected to anything. So we took that off, and everything was the same as it had been. But we had this midget electrician. See, now that's a phrase you're not going to hear on any other podcast this week. This guy crawled through and brought a wire all the way from the west wing through to the east wing and wired me into the wall. So I figure I'm good. I don't need the Wi-Fi. Stace got all kinds of shit hooked up to Wi-Fi. She can command the car to start and the gates to open and the goddamn lights to come on with her phone in her hand. I'm a simple bird lawyer, small town bird attorney. I have the shit wired in the wall the way God intended. But the Wi-Fi here in the house, after all these issues, it's not been right. It's been lacking, and we pay for the souped-up internet, and I've mentioned one time we even got not only some server, but some extra internet, and we put it in a garage, or a box, and put it in the closet in the garage just in case we needed it. Anyway, over the last week, the Wi-Fi has been going funky. She can't watch the TV in the sunroom and other things in other parts of the house. It's going crazy. So she's been fixing these things where it has to, be reset or whatever to come through. Well, Sunday night, TV went out again, Wi-Fi went out again. She tried to fix it. It got late, so she went to bed. I didn't know anything about this, but I got up and I couldn't get on the internet that I'm supposed to be wired into the wall for. Well, what the fuck? Well, how can this be? Well, then she starts trying to fix it. And she starts calling these kinds of customer service people. And I don't know why they call them customer service, because they're not customers and they're of absolutely no service. More like the customer hindrance line. Several of them, we determined over hours that we've got internet coming in the house. It's coming in. It just ain't going anywhere from there. And she's calling people and giving them the goddamn serial numbers off the bottoms of these goddamn little fucking white boxes that have these blue and red lights on them and all these other things. I've heard that some way or another my modem had lost its mojo or the router took the wrong route. And she went and got a modem and a router. A big fucking souped up job. But that wouldn't work. And she called people with the customer service on that. And that wouldn't work. And she worked on this for like fucking 10 and a half straight hours on Monday, which is why we couldn't record. And a lot of people are saying, well, where's Hotchkiss Featherbottom? Why didn't you get Hotchkiss in on that? Well, number one, when we started this, we didn't think it was going to be a goddamn all-day fix. And secondly, Hotchkiss can't just throw his hands up and on the spur of the moment leave the state. He's got to get clearance. Because he lives in southern Indiana, I've mentioned this, and he's got to cross state lines. That's a little tricky. He has to get prior approval. So I had him on standby. But he did arrive on Tuesday morning, and he starts in on this stuff. And wouldn't you know who won the pony, Brian? He does a lot of shit, and he still can't get anything to fucking go right. And he finally said, well, wait a minute. I think we need to call somebody that they had already spoken to, one or both of them, one of these customer service people, where English is sometimes a third language to them. So there's a little barrier. But this was one of the first people they talked to, the cable people. Or the internet people. That's the cable internet, the whole 9 yards. Let's ask them another question and see if they've got this right. They call him up. Boom, boom, boom. Yeah, boom, boom, boom. Yeah, what? And then the guy says, well, wait a minute. Is that a router or a modem or a router and a modem? And they said, it's a router and a modem. No one's ever asked that before. And the guy said, oh, that's your problem. And in only 5 hours of fucking with this shit, he said, here you go. And he punched a button and the shit worked. And then they just had to redo everything. They asked the wrong question, or they didn't ask the right question, or however you want to phrase it. But I was cut off from the world at the height of my relevancy, never been more relevanter, just trended on Twitter. I thought it was a plot, Brian. I thought I'd been sabotaged. But come to find out, the router took the wrong route and the modem lost its mojo. And we scrapped all that shit that we had and got the new shit in there. And once that the fine internet folks asked the right question, they were able to do what they were supposed to be doing before. That's all I know.
Well, I'm sure we're all thankful that things have been repaired and you are here. You didn't have to go on location. We didn't have to.
Goddamn. Well, see, here's the thing. While all this was going on, you and I were going through days of torment. Well, me, actually, I don't think anything. You were actually looking forward to it. Because I'm thinking like, okay, let's say, because the Geek Squad was going to make an appointment for 2 weeks from Thursday, right? They're so backed up. Hotchkiss to the rescue, by the way. But I'm thinking, okay, here's what I can do. I can have Hotchkiss, if this shit's unsalvageable, I always imagine the worst. What can possibly go wrong? And let's work backwards from there. This is the word. I have no internet in this house. I'm going to have to do everything from scratch. I'm going to have to buy completely new computers, have somebody come in and rewire us from the fucking pole, the whole 9 yards. That's going to take a while. So how can we do these shows? How can we keep speaking to the people? I was going to give Hotchkiss instructions to go out and get me a portable laptop type of arrangement. What do they call them? I guess laptop.
They call them laptops, yes.
Yeah. That you can shove this microphone into. I know where I'd like to shove this microphone today. You shove this microphone into it, I can put these headsets on, and I can go down the road here to the fucking hotel that's got the Wi-Fi, and I can I can broadcast from there. That's what I was going to do if all else failed here, and I told you about this, and we were going to do it on the phone until I could get that equipment to then do another show at the hotel. And you were actually salivating at the prospect of me out in a fucking Red Roof Inn parking lot with a laptop and a microphone, acting like Trisha Takanau. Tom, I'm standing in the Red Roof Inn parking lot, the scene of Wi-Fi.
I look for what's best for the show, and naturally what's best for the show is Jim Cornette on the show. But secondly, I think about the big moment. And quite frankly, you're always doing the show from Castle Cornette. There were a few location shows way back from fan fests. But if we can get you out amongst the people, that's the best chance we have of you getting arrested on the air.
Wait a minute.
And that's the YouTube clip everyone wants.
Hold on. Now, number one, if I went and got a hotel room with Wi-Fi, I still wouldn't be out in front of the people. And if I was to be arrested on this, certainly you would not be a yellow journalist and a a dirt sheet writer type of person and actually broadcast my live arrest on the air, certainly you wouldn't do a thing like that.
Broadcast makes it sound like it would go out live. No. This would be auctioned off to Access Hollywood or TMZ. They would have the exclusive first run of Jim Cornette getting arrested on the air, and then that would be a perfect tease for that weekend's show, which will come out late that night, whatever day it's supposed to come out.
Late that night. In the Jefferson County Jail in Louisville, Kentucky, Jim Cornette, the leader of the cult of Cornette, was incarcerated, where he awaited charges on instigating mayhem. That's what I trended on Twitter for last week. See, we haven't spoken publicly in several days, and we were doing the experience that aired normally this past Saturday, as it was. We were doing that when we heard that I was getting the blame for Watergate and the guy jumping in the ring, and I trended on Twitter while we're peacefully doing our podcast, I guess. People afterwards were like, you were trending worldwide on Twitter. Without doing anything, saying anything, or actually being involved in any way in the incident that sparked people to talk about me. Has anyone else ever done this before? I mean, I said one time I could trend on Twitter for taking a shit, but this time I didn't even shit. It was somebody else's shit. They just gave me credit for it.
Of course, what you're referring to is there was a fan who jumped the rail at AEW Dynamite. We talked about that on the air and what a stupid guy he was. He attempted to attribute this act of stupidity to us, although I will say a lot of people have been, in the last few days especially, saying that the guy may be full of shit because apparently he's a Russo fan and apparently he's posted other things, and I don't know. That's the whole thing.
No, that's the whole thing, is he's an attention seeker. And so what he did was, apparently, he's some fat fuck that fantasizes that he's a professional wrestler and that he puts videos on the internet. He had been challenging Cody and Anthony Ogogo to meet him somewhere, or maybe on that day, because he knew he had tickets. I guess he didn't have the money to travel, so he had tickets because he lives around there. Meet me on such and such night, and he's cutting promos on them on the internet. And then he fucking, at the taping on live television, he doesn't jump in the ring on Cody. Ogogo's not there. He jumps up on the ring, or he didn't get in the ring. He jumped up on the apron of the ring during Jericho's thing with MJF. I'm pretty sure, because Jericho's the next best thing they've got to a star there. And he wanted to get on television. And then the next day, he tweeted, yeah, Jim Cornette, Brian Last, I did it for you, because he knows that we have all these fucking listeners, and he's trying to get, okay, now they'll praise me. He's an attention seeker.
And for the record, because we were recording the show when all of this happened.
Yeah.
Once we were done, what did we do? We both immediately denounced the guy and told him he's an idiot and blocked him.
Well, you denounced him. I cussed him out.
Yeah. That's true.
Yours was just a simple denouncement. Mine was more extenuous. But the point is, since he cuts promos on this guy on the internet for attention who's a star, and he jumps up on the apron of the ring or tries to get in the ring on Jericho who's a star, and he fucking tweets, see, I did it for you guys because we're stars. He's an attention-seeking fuckwit who thinks he's somebody. But the way apparently that we trended, he wasn't trending when he was talking about Cody. Nobody trended when they told him he was a piece of shit. I trended because fucking Twinkle Toes, and to a lesser extent, I guess, Matt Hardy, I may have blocked him or he may have blocked me. I don't know. I don't think I saw his shit. And then, of course, Matt's perpetually pregnant wife on Twitter tried to blame me for it. Well, Cornette instigated him to do it. And even Jericho had tweeted, you fucked, in response to him saying he did it for us, you fucking idiot. Cornette would have shoved his tennis racket up your ass and broke all the windows out of your car. Because he knows me. But these other fucking dimwits say, oh, Cornette instigated this type of attempted violence, attempted fame mongering. And we're going to talk about this here fairly extensively on the program, the history of people jumping in the ring or getting involved and why and how it's changed, and security, because there's apparently some things they need to know about security now that I can give them some fucking helpful hints on, since I've been through it from a different side. But this guy's fame mongering. And so they on Twitter want to blame me for instigating this. And that's where I had the fucking little joust with Twinkle Toes, because he wouldn't even name me. He just, well, it's time to tone down the online persona, because he's such a phony. He thinks everybody else is too.
And then he insulted the listeners.
But I was about to say, but then he said, and his low IQ followers. I'm sorry, but our fans are not the ones that are watching a program written for kids by kids. And even if you have a problem with what I say, if you have a difference of opinion with whether I think you suck or not, I guess that's natural. But don't say that people that listen to this show have low IQs just because you're used to seeing people like that at your programs. So I had to fucking say a few things to him. But that's how fanatical, they put the fanatic in fan, that's how fanatical that these fucking AEW apologists, I won't even say the fans, I don't even think most of their fans are this bad, just the hardcore AEW apologists on Twitter and that just can't see any wrong, possibly that worship at the altar of Uncle Dave. They picked it up and decided that it was my fault. And made me trend on Twitter for, once again, something I didn't say, I didn't do, I wasn't there, I've never met this fucking guy, and he didn't mention my name till after he did it. So I just wish you guys would stop, for one thing, because JimCornette.com is still under construction, the new site, and Cornette's Collectibles is not on sale, and every time I trend on Twitter without having shit on sale, it costs me a fortune. So please hold your trending until the upcoming announcement of when we go open back up again. But anyway, the one thing that now that has come to light of the news of the past day, now that I'm back online, that made it just incredibly hilarious that Reby Hardy had to jump in on this, was the fact that apparently she was tweeting mad at me from her bed of labor. She has just given birth, but 3 days ago, she was tweeting. And I can't even remember what do you have her tweets, or at least the tweet that instigated the whole thing where she blamed me, or have you even looked for that stuff?
I haven't really looked for it.
Okay, well, basically, I don't care, but basically, she said something to the effect of, well, Jim Cornette needs to fucking shut up or whatever. And because I used to have a ton of respect for the talent that her husband used to display on a regular basis, I have not told her nearly any of the things that's wrong with her, and I try to be polite. So I just tweeted back, I know you've probably heard this thousands of times in your life, but it applies here. Was anybody fucking talking to you? And then she comes back with a tirade. It looked like a 14-year-old teenage girl with, LMFAO, you use me for clickbait, my name and image thousands of times, and yet nobody's asking you because nobody's talking to you, but you're still talking LMAO in capitals. What the fuck? And so apparently we have infringed on Reby Hardy, and that's why she's upset. Because we constantly talk about her and use her for clickbait on our wildly popular YouTube videos, which constantly feature Reby Hardy. I wish that somebody could just go back and look. Somebody involved with our YouTube channel could just go back and look and see how many of our highly rated and wildly popular YouTube videos have centered around Reby Hardy. I wish somebody could do that.
Okay, I'm going to look. I'm going to go back to the first video that mentions Hardy. There are no videos that actually mention the word Reby in the title. So I couldn't search for Reby. I could search for Hardy because she's married to someone famous.
Yes. We are on the subject of fame seekers here. So
that's right. Here's you on the future of Matt Hardy, you reviewing some of his early AEW stuff that you didn't like. None of these images, by the way, the fantastic work of Travis Heckel. Check it out, the official Jim Cornette YouTube channel. None of these images that I've seen so far have featured any depiction, characterization, nothing of Reby Hardy. Here's one. This was after she got mad because we talked about the email we got that was about her behavior on the set of whatever bad cinematic match Matt was having.
Yeah, well, and let's clarify that. We got an email from a fan who knew somebody that had worked on the crew when they shot a cinematic match at the Hardy compound. And in the process of this like page and a half email documenting the things that had gone on there and the observations that were made,
which were correct, by the way.
Which were correct. It was mentioned that everybody was told, don't park next to Reby Hardy's car. And then we kind of made fun of the fact that at the end of this thing, for whatever reason that was not explained then and remains inexplicable to this day, she was playing the piano in a barn in the final scene. And that was pretty much the conversation that was centered around Reby Hardy. To my recollection, is this correct?
That is correct. So the clip for the original conversation about the email we received, that went up November 10th. The response after her reaction was on November 14th. This appears to be the only video I could find that we have her image in the background playing the piano while Matt's making a dumb face in the front. The name of the video is Jim Cornette on Matt Hardy and his wife being upset with Jim's review of Elite Deletion. We have never used her name in any clickbait, and this is the only use of her image, and it is so far in the back that no one would notice it in a thumbnail. So,
so anyway, here's it. I'm not going to tell Reby Hardy all the things that's wrong with her, because now she's a brand new mother. But that's the fucking thing is that 3 days ago, she was accusing me, I guess, of being at the grassy knoll, along with being responsible for this guy jumping in the ring on Twitter. And got, from what I saw, I know I've probably got the block record. I blocked a lot of people that probably would have an opposing view, but she got quite a bit of feedback telling her to mind her own beeswax as well, and not as polite terms as I used. And then she's giving birth to, and Matt's 3 days ago, he's an expectant father. She's about to give birth, and he's on Twitter, I guess. As I mentioned, I didn't see his equating me, well, this horrible violence and despicable conduct. I just want to say it before we get into the real problem here. If somebody can find a clip of mine where I encouraged people to go to their shows, jump in the ring, and take matters into your own hands and beat somebody up, then I would be more than happy to sit down and listen to that clip. Because I don't remember saying it. Now, I will say, Brian, I will go on record here, and people feel free. Wrestling news sites, take this clip or take this transcript. I will admit full culpability and apologize publicly to anyone that's involved if some fan goes to an AEW show and hits the ring carrying a giant cauldron full of boiling oil and a machine or apparatus capable of rendering said boiled oil and humans into fat to sell for soap. If they try to do that to anybody, I will apologize, because that's my fault. But otherwise, I believe my hands are clean. Because
I sincerely hope no one brings a wood chipper to the ring, or I'm screwed.
Yeah, and Brian will apologize for wood chippers. But no, I've never said anybody should get in the ring. As a matter of fact, I've said half the AEW roster don't belong in the ring. I believe that's been my point. Not only do you fans out there not belong in the ring, but most of them don't either. And this and the bigger discussion here, and the reason I wanted to talk about it is because it's been so long since anybody's seen any type of assing off from the stands, the fans, the crowd, that they don't know what to think of it and are just completely bamboozled and mortified by it. And it's something that used to be fairly common, but for different reasons, and then took a turn and then has fallen out of favor again, but now may be coming back for a completely different reason yet. But the idea of people jumping in the ring started as far back as the origins of the wrestling business because someone was incensed over something that had happened. Even in the days before there were particularly heels and baby faces, there were instances because there was a lot of betting going on and somebody to lose their money or whatever the fuck. And we've said there's been spectacular cases like when Danny Hodges' father hadn't been smartened up and Angelo Savoldi was healing on him. So Hodges' father fucking stabbed fucking Savoldi. But from the dawn of wrestling, jumping in a ring has been because someone was incensed at someone, at the heel, at the referee, at the whole situation. That was 95% of trouble that would happen at wrestling matches. The other 5% would be fights amongst other people and a general riot when they'd set the seats on fire when a stipulation got fucked up or somebody didn't show up or whatever. And most of the time, you always had to be on guard from the time you left the locker room till the time you got back to the locker room. But especially the heels mostly. The baby faces every once in a while would get, some wise ass, but mostly it was people wanting to pat them and touch them and feel on them and girls wanting to kiss them and etc. But the heels had to be on guard, but you knew when your trouble spots were, and you knew when you were in a particular town where or when or if you might have trouble, if you'd been there enough and got used to everything. Most of the time you could get to the ring just fine, although that was touchy too as well. I saw a guy myself in the Cincinnati Gardens jump Roddy Piper on the way to the ring for the match. He was such a hot heel. The guy just came out and fucking took a swing at him right between the cops. And I couldn't see whether he nailed Piper or not, but Piper was down on top of him and hit him with, those real fast punches Piper would use in the ring when he was down on top of a guy? Same fucking thing. And the cops carried the guy out by feet and arms within seconds. But that was going to the ring. Most of the time you could get to the ring and you always had a police escort, more on security later. And then in the match, pretty much as long as the babyface was in charge or any point that the babyface was in charge, you knew you were pretty good. You were okay. But there were points if manager interference after we've taken over and got the heat. That's why I never sat down and why I was always pacing, because I had to turn back and forth to make sure that I could see people coming at me as soon as possible, especially anytime I would interfere. If I hadn't done anything and I was just leaning on the apron, I was looking around, but you knew your trouble spots. And then a manager interference or a match with no manager, but a heel pulls out a gimmick and uses it. And that can fucking trigger somebody to try to come in. And then most of the time it would happen in the finish or right after the finish because people are hot about it. In the finish, when somebody is cheated behind the referee's back and the fan might get there before the referee turns around. I've seen that happen. Or other times, obviously right at the 1, 2, 3 fuck finish, boom, here's going to come some shit. Or especially and most often, as we've seen by the Oxbaker Cleveland riot, Afterbirth, where the heels are getting heat on the babyface. Now the bell is ringing, the match is over, especially if it's the main event. Because here's another thing. This is foreign thinking to people with wrestling impressions of these days because they wouldn't think this way. But the people knew even if they got kicked out and or arrested after the main event, what are they going to miss? So that's when it would always fucking happen, not only because that was the main event, the most important match, the biggest star or whatever, but also because people are like, I can try something now because I won't miss anything. And during the heat after, people are trying to hit the ring. I mentioned on the show here not long ago, I think, the one time I saw one of the fans getting the better of somebody is poor Jimmy Hart. He was on top of Ken Lucas in the Gardens and choking him. And this guy, you can see it on video. And I was about 10 feet away from it when it happened. He spun right around one of the guards and rolled under the rope. And one of the guards tried to grab his foot and missed it. And he was up and just windmilling Jimmy Hart right on his back from behind before Jimmy knew what the fuck was happening. And Lawler turned around and saw it, and the cops are piling in the ring, and they got him off. But that's the only time that I've personally witnessed a fan get the better of any of the boys. So that's a fool's errand. But that would be the finish, and then the afterbirth, you're getting the heat. That's when people are going to try to hit the ring. And then the most dangerous thing you will do that night is the walk back. Because now they're as mad as they're going to be, and you're going to be as close to some of them as you're going to be the rest of the show, and that would be where shit really broke loose. That was the most dangerous 30 seconds of your night. That's what used to instigate fan interaction. Go ahead.
The two things I always heard about the walk back, tell me if they're true from your experience. One, never stop, keep moving,
No.
and
Yes.
Two, the Terry Funk rule, or maybe the Johnny Valentine rule. If there's a guy just standing there directly in front of you and he's not moving, walk around him.
Yes. Because it's like block or charge, right? They're going to try to instigate. And also, and that's when Terry Funk was saying walk around somebody, because I would see Terry, that was the insane thing about Terry. He could walk up to people on the front row and back them down facially without touching them. And it was, I don't know how he did. Well, I know how he did it, but you have to be Terry Funk to do it. But also, you don't watch, I didn't watch people's faces, you watch their hands. Because you want to see if anybody's got their hands in their pockets. Because we're leaving Biloxi one night. Well, as a matter of fact, that was the night I've told the story. And I won't have too many fan stories here, but the fucking big farm boy that fucking came at Bobby, and Bobby front face locked him, and the guy was like 350 pounds and just stood up with Bobby, and his feet were flailing in the air, and he's wiping out ringside seats with Bobby Eaton, who wouldn't let go. And all the cops are trying to clear that up, and I'm turning around going, holy shit, and there's an old man with a cigar and a fucking hat, and his hands in his pocket. And I said, well, fuck it, better to err on the side of safety. And I fucking punched him, and fucking his hat flew off and his cigar flew up, and he started to bring his hand out of his pocket, and I said, fuck it, I kicked him in the balls and took off. But anyway, yeah, the walk back, that's where you would have the majority of your problems, and also you're out from under the ring lights and you're in the dark. And it's such a crowd. Obviously, there have been many lawsuits. Midnight Express was involved in another one where supposedly the wrong man. You can get stuck. Somebody reached those crowds. And remember, it wasn't everybody sees TV now and they've got these elaborate entrances in these stages. Look at the pictures from the 60s and 70s and 80s of these arenas. You had ringside seats and small aisleways with groups of uniformed policemen escorting you. But the people are jammed on the floors and they're shoulder to shoulder, elbow to elbow, fucking however numerous deep, yelling or throwing stuff or trying to spit at you. And somebody could reach through two people with a fucking ice pick or a pocket knife and boom, and you're done right back and they're gone. It's happened a million times. Sometimes they never even caught the people that they saw. You know, cut the guy or whatever. Remember the guy that's cut Blackjack Mulligan in Boston 270-something stitches? Gorilla Monsoon threw the guy to the ring to the cops, and the cops, it either didn't give a shit, or because it was Boston, I guess, or thought it was all part of the show and let the guy get up and run off. But anyway.
What about, after
go ahead.
After this thing happened on Dynamite, one of the instances a lot of people mentioned, and Some people even sent the clip. And give credit where it's due. Justin Roberts apparently took this guy down.
Yes,
Good on Justin Roberts, but a lot of people sent us the Mark Curtis, Brian Hildebrand clip from Nitro. A referee's job when that happens.
And I wish the fuck that I had Twitter for all the people, but I've seen it, that people have sent it out on a regular basis. But yeah, that's where I was going from the 60s, 70s, and 80s territories to the Attitude Era. Because now it started being a mixture. Did you notice? Because especially the WCW shows, because they had the spring breaks and the Road Wilds and whatever, and also the NWO, and it was supposed to be cool and anti-establishment. They had more people throwing things, which they encouraged, sort of like ECW with that chair thing. They put the chair throwing on their open and left themselves fucking so legally culpable. I can't believe Heyman's father was an attorney. But anyway, you still had heat of guys getting drunk or guys just getting mad and hitting the ring to go after the heel, which is what it traditionally had been back in the 90s, especially in WCW. And there was a couple in the WWF as well. But you also had, remember, just the fucking goofs that started jumping in the ring and going, hey, 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 and just to be on live television because they were making a big deal out of the fans with the signs and it's live. And in the WWF, the girls are flashing their tits. And down in Atlanta, all the other shit. So you started seeing the Jolly Jokers that would have one too many and just roll in to get on TV, right? And be part of the cool thing. But they weren't deluding themselves into thinking they were wrestlers. They were just drunk college guys who wanted to get on TV. You know what I'm saying, right? You remember a few of those.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's really the change from when people really hated wrestlers and were trying to get to them to people saying, hey, this is well lit. This is on cable TV. It's live. I can get some attention and my friends will remember this.
Yes, but it's changed again. Because think about this, because that was in the 90s where these were fucking drunk guys with NWO shirts that were out with their friends, and they're seeing the fucking girls flashing the tits, and they're going, hey, and they're not hitting the ring to attack anybody, nor are they hitting the ring to be wrestlers. They're just hitting the ring to be jackasses, right? They're not on social media because there wasn't any at the time, but they're not pretending to be wrestlers and sending letters habitually to wrestlers instead of emails like they have now or tweets like they have now. They're not doing the stalker thing about the pro wrestling business like the guy that was constantly knocking on the fucking Performance Center door. They're certainly not like the Sonya Deville stalker, which let's face it, that situation was a really mentally disturbed guy and an attractive woman who was a public figure, and she might as well have been a singer or an actress or whatever, because he thought there was a romantic relationship, and that was a whole nother kettle of fish. It was peripherally about wrestling. But that's the point, is that those people in the 90s just jumping in to be drunk assholes, they still weren't wrapped up in this. But now, and this is the point I'm going to make, I think especially AEW, but WWE, well, they already have. I mean, my God, I can't imagine the level of security they've got. But they need to watch out now, because this, now especially that there's no more pandemic and fans are coming back, they're going to have their most devoted, really into it people in the building that may take their anyone can play and everyone belongs thing to a whole new meaning and decide to start, I want to make myself known. And what they need to do is, instead of just assuming that everybody is there to watch a show that they all are smart to and that they're going to play along and they're going to work with us because they're our fans. I know it's passé to actually have legitimate security at wrestling because it hasn't been needed in so long. But I think they need to start, because and that's the way it's changed in the last 20 years from the Attitude Era. Now it's more likely to be people that really think they want to be wrestlers. But regardless of who's jumping in the ring for what reason, it's not good. But it's certainly easier than it used to be in the old days, because in the old days there were police, legitimate uniformed police officers working security at the matches that were looking for people who were going to jump in the ring. In the 90s Attitude Era and the Monday Night Wars, they were in big buildings that had legitimate police and also staff security that were still experienced in this type of thing. And even if they knew that people might not necessarily be mad, this is major national television, 10 million viewers on Monday night, whatever, they had it covered and still had things happen. But then we went through the period where wrestling was so fucking phony and so bleh. When I got to Ring of Honor and started looking around in 2009, I looked at a couple of shows. I asked Sid. You remember our friend Sid?
That guy was the biggest piece of shit
all
time. What a talentless loser.
Would you just stop?
With no idea how business worked.
Another story is the one that I'm telling.
Moron.
I said, God damn it. I said, where are the cops? Oh, we use some of our guys. They used their wrestling school students, and or the guys were setting up the ring. Then they'd put the security T-shirt on. They'd show people to their seats, or they would, when there was going to be a fight out in the crowd, which I put an end to as quickly as I could for legal fucking liability reasons. They would have the wrestling school students go out and then kind of spread people out and get out of the way. I'm like, oh fuck. And it was that way almost everywhere but WWE. And now the little engine that could, AEW, is going to have to recognize that they're no longer in these little rec centers and they need to act like a big company. And I know they were using Atlas Security before the pandemic. And I've worked a bunch of shows with the guys at Atlas Security, and I'm not saying anything bad about them. But Atlas Security are not uniformed police officers that are carrying weapons and are licensed to arrest people. Yes, they can handle the drunks and the fucking goofballs and the people that get in a fight and the people, whatever the fuck. They've got plenty of experience handling all that shit. But when you're doing national television and you're doing shows from big buildings, and especially if you think you might have a security issue, not because anybody hates anybody on your card, but because everybody thinks the people on your card, they can whip them, and or since you fostered the idea that everybody can wrestle and everybody can play, are you going to delude some of these people? And, well, I could jump up and be a star too. You need to have a couple of people around in uniform that have the power of arrest and handcuff to dissuade that type of activity. And I've just, the evolution of the way security was in wrestling, and I know a lot of people will say, God damn, Cornette, as many stories as you've told about, people jumping in the ring, I'm surprised they had any security. That's what, in some places, yes, there's always instances where you had shitty security or they didn't care or lackadaisical or whatever. But in the big buildings, the big promotions, the territories, they had to have in Knoxville in the 90s, when I ran Smoky Mountain Wrestling, we were obligated in order to rent the Knoxville Civic Coliseum to have, I think Sandy Scott cut it down to either 6 or 8 uniformed Knoxville police officers at, I'm going to say it was $30-something an hour back even then, along with ushers and ticket takers, or we couldn't be in the building. They demanded that. Most buildings did have some requirement of the amount of legitimate police officers, whether they were off-duty police and working security in uniform, or whether they were on duty in some places. It just depended. You had to have that. And the majority of them, they generally, especially in the old days when most everything was done by cash and there was these huge crowds in these buildings, somebody would be by the box office but the majority of the uniformed police would be there primarily to escort the heels to the ring, surround the ring. Generally, the rule was at least one uniformed cop in every corner of the ring in a chair facing the audience, right outside the whatever railing or barricade or rope or whatever there was. And then they would take the heels back again. In Lake Charles, Louisiana, which was not one of Watts's bigger grossing towns, but because of the amount of trouble that they had, I don't know. I never counted exactly, but I would say we did not have less than 10 uniformed police walking us to all the heels to the ring and back, and at least 6 around the ring, 4 in each corner and 1 at each aisleway for the babyface and the heel entrance, because of the amount of trouble they had. And they would literally surround us completely in a circle and walk the heels to and from the ring so that the fans couldn't even reach through them. Because that's where they used to do the thing where they'd put Drano in the water guns and try to squirt Akbar and those guys in the eyes, or the Freebirds would drive to the police station and they'd park their car there and the police would bring them to the arena so the fans would cut the tires of the police car that brought the Freebirds. That kind of shit. But this is not just for the protection of the heels. This is for protection against lawsuits. Because if it's the promoter is especially liable, believe me, I've been through this too, if they didn't provide proper security. But anyway, that's the thing, is that the fans today might say, well, they haven't seen police at matches like this. It used to be commonplace until, I think, 1980, the uniformed cops that worked the matches at the Louisville Garden still wore their riot helmets because they had such problems getting the heels out of the ring afterwards and to their cars outside the building that night. And then, most people have grown up watching the WWE and WCW television of the 90s and then WWE of 2000s, where there's so much room around the ring and you don't see police and you don't even see the security because they're purposely not shot on camera. Goddamn, to get to somebody in the WWE now, the way their floor layout is, you'd have to be like the fucking Super Bowl streaker. You'd have to run 30 yards to get to somebody. It used to be in the arenas for house shows, it was a matter of 6-8 feet. And so, point is, they're all too fucking slack, Brian. Now they've all convinced themselves there's no heat anymore. Nobody's going to try to do anything. Everybody's with it. Well, now I think, you've got a lot of screwy people in the world. The very reason why everybody's with it and nobody's mad and it's all a fucking show and nobody takes this seriously is exactly what might entice these people to just fucking try to get on television. They think nothing's going to happen to them. They think that they can whip the guys in the ring, or they're all working and we're all friends or whatever, or that they don't see police around. They just, some fucking schlub in a t-shirt that says security and you recognize him as the job guy from YouTube. It used to be an intimidating thing as a fan to come in and see that fucking ring in front of a big arena full of people and the guys in it under the lights. Most people, unless they got drunk off their ass, didn't want to have anything to do with that. And I've seen guys jump in the ring convinced they were going to whip somebody and stand up and look around and fucking freeze. Like, what the fuck have I done? And then they're toast. Terry Funk used to rip their pants off. His father taught him that. He said, guy jumps in the ring no matter how mad he is. If you just grab him, that's how he did me on TV. They do the fuck in Memphis that time. I didn't know it, but they do the marks like that. Grab the fucking back pockets and pull down. And you pants that motherfucker, and he's standing there either in his shorts or with his dingleberry hanging out in front of 5,000 people. He's done. But anyway, that's, it used to be an intimidating thing. There used to be a lot of cops around, security. The guys looked like they'd kick the shit out of you. There was no reason, no motivation except anger to try that. But now it's just, what the fuck? Everybody's just jacking around. I think they're not, if they're not taking it seriously on camera, I'm thinking the people off camera are taking it less seriously. Just think, oh, this is so we can all do this. That's dangerous. What do you think?
I think this was a lone nut. I think this was someone who, like you said, was seeking attention. Someone who got the attention briefly that he wanted. Probably someone that needs to talk to somebody and seek some help, quite frankly. But to the overall thing, it's a lone nut. I don't expect we'll see too much more of this, but it'll happen, especially as alcohol starts getting reintroduced into the picture. It'll happen every now and then. In WCW, we saw people trying to get to the ring just to celebrate being there, so you never know. But like I said, when it comes to this and the blaming, most people got it right away. Give Chris Jericho credit. He got it right away. Quite frankly, I can't think of another wrestling personality ever who has endorsed the idea of beating fans who jump the rail more than you. Who else ever? So I think it's all ridiculous. And I think, sometimes with some people like.
And here's the thing, though. That's what I was going to say, is that everybody just got mortified about this guy because what in the world was he going to do? Like, he didn't have a machete. He's a fat schlub that was unarmed and couldn't get past Justin Roberts. Bless Justin for being a large man, but like you mentioned, it's not the size of the dog in the fight. Brian Hildebrand took some of these guys down too, and fucking showed them their own asshole. But he's trying to get attention, try to be part of the show, jumps up on the apron, gets goozled by the ring announcer, and everybody was acting like, my God, the Jericho and MJF escaped death at the hands of this homicidal maniac just because they've not, in the modern era, seen shit like this. And, I hate to tell them, I would love to transport them back and show them a few things that they would have goddamn shit themselves about that used to happen. And we go, oh, that happened again. You go on. But the thing is, the companies, and I'll say this again, and then you can follow up whatever you want to say. Everybody has gotten lax and complacent on security. Because, even the last several years, I worked shows, just here and there. Whether I was a babyface or a heel or whatever, I stopped even paying any attention, which, was just because nothing was ever going to happen, but you never know. But I stopped paying attention. And boy, I used to have a real good spidey sense about anybody that was close to me. So I think everybody's got complacent, and they need to put security there that looks like security. They need to make an announcement beforehand that obviously anyone crossing the barricade or the railing or whatever obstruction they have put up will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. And they need to have somebody keeping an eye on this again, because I'm not saying people are going to come in the ring and try to commit murder, but there's a lot of stupid people that may just want to be part of the show. So I start acting like a goddamn wrestling event again instead of a fucking playground and get some security. And what were you finish what you were going to say? I apologize. I'm just all fired up.
That's quite all right. A couple things I want to say, but one, because Omega kind of restarted it after it had started dying down, after you had denounced him, I denounced him, Jericho denounced him. Everyone seemed to be on the same page. This guy's a clown looking for attention. And then Omega had to certainly, in his way, point people to you again. And I think, there's a hypocrisy because, for the most part, most of the people we hear from, I shouldn't say most, but a lot, because I haven't checked, but we hear from a lot of people, I love AEW and I love Jim Cornette. I like AEW and I like to listen to Jim Cornette. There's an audience that can appreciate both. There is certainly an audience that is, I love Jim Cornette, I don't like AEW. And there's even a small audience that is, I am worshiping Jim Cornette, I despise AEW. And it's the same on the other side.
Let's be fair, there's even 4 or 5 that love AEW and don't like me.
And there's the same on the other side. And when Kenny puts out a tweet like that, all he's doing is riling people up. And when you talk about fans doing crazy things, first of all, you came out and you insulted the fans. I will happily say, because I'm the one who monitored it, that some of you may remember participating in a survey a while back, and very happy to announce that the Jim Cornette Experience and Jim Cornette's Drive Thru actually has a very large audience, educated, well-educated, high-earning, smart people, Kenny. As smart as AEW's audience, but he decided he was going to attack all of our audience, and I just think it's a disservice when they want to come at you for
when we were
things.
all doing the kumbaya thing, and even people were even tweeting, well, at least they can all come together over saying, fuck this guy, right? And then fucking Harpo's got to stir shit.
Well, it's like I tweeted out, look at this clown clutching his pearls, because that's what it is. He chooses what to be offended at. Matt Hardy chooses what to be offended at, and it just so happens to coincide with being offended at the one person who criticizes their bad in-ring emoting. That's my point. And there's a
you have a good
there.
point there.
When the Young Bucks go out there and lie and say that Jim Cornette in his mid-50s wanted to go out on the road and work a program with the Young Bucks, I assume taking bumps. That's a lie. They know it's a lie, but it's part of their narrative. It's part of their story. Jim's their boogeyman. But when you lie like that, when Kenny goes out there and, again, he chooses who to be offended at, look who he's aligned with, and we'll talk maybe a little more later about people he's been aligned with in the past where he chose to look the other way. There's a hypocrisy there, and both audiences have crazy fans, and I would argue that AEW has more crazy fans than we do. Listen to how many people have been harassed by crazy AEW fans. Jim Ross, they were wishing Jim Ross would die.
Yes. Because he said WWE Dynamite. Oh, God, kill him, you horrible person. Oh.
So give me a break. Like I said in the tweet, quit clutching your pearls, Kenny.
Yeah, well, he's used to clutching round things, whether it be pearls or grapes or whatever.
But I was going to say, Jim, hypothetically, if you're out there, if you're listening and you're getting the message wrong, if you haven't heard any of the lessons that Jim has said about jumping the rail, and you're still considering something stupid like that, perhaps you need someone to talk to.
I think that would help. I think that would not only be help, it would be BetterHelp. Folks, the folks at BetterHelp.com can help you if you are just sitting there stewing because you can't be a professional wrestler. And you can't be on national television because you're a fat bastard. Obviously, you need to talk to somebody. Or if you're a regular person that has regular problems, that may be more up their bailiwick there. But the folks at BetterHelp.com can help you achieve your goals. And if there's something interfering with your happiness, they can assess your needs and match you with a therapist that can start helping. You can start communicating in under 48 hours. It's professional counseling done securely online with a broad range of expertise, and you can log into your account anytime worldwide, by the way. This is not geographically limited. And send a message to your counselor and get timely responses. You can schedule weekly video or phone sessions, no waiting rooms. BetterHelp is committed to facilitating great therapeutic matches, and they make it easy to change counselors if you need. And it's more affordable than traditional offline counseling. The folks at BetterHelp want you to start living a happier life today. So go to the website and read the testimonials they post daily. When you visit BetterHelp, by the way, that's HELP, BetterHelp.com/drive, and join the over 1 million people taking charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced professional, you can get 10% off your first month's services. BetterHelp.com/drive, 10% off your first month's services at BetterHelp.com, by the way, /drive.
Well, Jim, I think we better help some of the listeners here today with some of their questions and get some answers. But before we do that, I think we would be remiss here on episode 200 if we didn't talk about one of our longtime favorites. Of course, a man who has suffered multiple injuries, all within the city limits of Baltimore, John Fell.
That's right. John has been falling for so long. He's every single hospital in town is on a first-name basis with John Fell in Baltimore because he's been a clumsy young man all his life. But in this case, he has helped us quite a bit with the documentation of past shows we've got up on the Patreon. We couldn't have done it without him, and we want to send a shout-out to John. And also, not only to John Fell, who a lot of people do not realize this, but John Fell in Baltimore is not the first John Fell in Baltimore. There is indeed another, a previous John Fell. This John Fell's father is the original John Fell in Baltimore. And we want to say happy birthday to the original John Fell, July 13th. But we were down. We were off the air. But happy birthday, John Fell Sr. on July 13th. He, as Christine Jarrett would say, he's been feeling puny. And he doesn't even fall down. It's his son that's the clumsy one. So we want to say happy birthday to him also. 200 of these drive-thrus. Actually, for the Patreon customers, they know that it's been more than that. There was a previous version of the drive-thru. We're actually at about 340 something. But who's counting? How do they get that Patreon again?
Patreon.com/Cornette. Another big batch of shows going up this week. And of course, you can access the archive, the drive-thru, any experience going back to the beginning. In 2013, originally, the drive-thru was a half-hour VIP show. So many of those shows have never been heard before by a big audience. And of course, the experience has been the experience since the very beginning. But check that out.
It's been an experience.
Patreon.com/Cornette. For everyone who's been recently tweeting me, what episode do you come on? It's on there. I don't remember. It's like February 2016. I apologize for everyone reliving a voice that they may not like.
Well, but it's part of history.
It's history.
Hey, they're showing Gone with the Wind with a fucking disclaimer now. So, yeah, there's a disclaimer on Patreon. I did have another co-host at one point, but we try to overlook those things. Anyway, and how many hundreds, or is it now thousands of hours available for a mere, what is it, $5 a month?
$5 a month.
Jesus Christ.
$1 a week if there are 5 weeks in that month. I don't know how many hundreds of hours or thousands of hours there are. I haven't actually added that up. John Fell in Baltimore may know. So I'll ask him.
Well, he's bumped his head so many times he might have memory issues. Anyway, moving on.
Well, Jim, one topic that has come up a lot the last several days, of course, this coincided with the period of time that you were off the computer, unfortunately, and we had just been talking about his health issues, or what we had thought about his recent health issues, the passing of Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff.
Yeah, that you told me about that on the phone on, I guess, Monday afternoon or whatever, but it obviously wasn't totally unexpected with what we had heard and seen over the past couple of weeks with him. You know, obviously his health had been failing, and he'd had the battles with cancer that we talked about and everything. And the clip that we just did 2 weeks ago, we told some various stories and some things. And if you want it, that's on YouTube. If anybody wants to hear that, I don't want to, go through the whole thing again so recently, but just another example that generation of guys is that, because Paul was almost 70, or was he 70?
I think he was 71, I want to say.
Yeah. So, I mean, the guys that I was a fan of, and right as I was getting in the business, are, 5, 10 or so years older than me. And it's starting not to be, unheard of, or an early death or something like that. It's just age and time. And, but like we said, Paul was such a great guy and such a fantastic talent. And I actually, as I got back on my email and everything, and I'm already bad with emails, so if anybody's emailed me lately, I'll see it eventually. But one I did see was from Danny Davis, my partner at OVW, because he had heard about Paul, and he did an angle with Orndorff in Smoky Mountain Wrestling that we all loved. The deal was, when Paul came in to Smoky Mountain, is right as we were getting started on the air, and he was just starting to do, as we talked about, shows again after having time off because of his arm and the nerve injury and everything. And so Bobby Fulton had him booked on that show that I did my pilots at. So I got him on the taping and then talked to him about some other dates. And we had Ronnie Garvin. And so Orndorff and Garvin had worked an early program on Smoky Mountain Wrestling on television and in some of the live events. But that gave me so much credibility, having former NWA world champion Ronnie Garvin. People had seen him on TV for years, especially in the Knoxville market. Orndorff had been Hogan's biggest drawing opponent, 5 years before that in the WWF, and he'd been all over television. So that was credibility. But we didn't talk about the one angle that I did with Orndorff that I really liked that Danny was involved in. And it also illustrates how you can make something mean something by not giving it to people until you really give it to them. I will explain. Paul Orndorff's finishing hold, as everybody knows, was the piledriver, and he did one of the best ones in the business. I mean, it was just the leaping and the flat sit and the whole 9 yards. He stuck people, but safely.
He got the best jump of anyone.
Yeah, because he was so strong and his legs were so strong. And he could take anybody up. Lawler had a weight limit. And then if you were past such and such, no.
And the other thing, too, real quick, just Hulk Hogan has a reputation. He didn't want to work with guys that he thought could possibly hurt him. And there he is taking Orndorff's piledriver all the time.
Yeah.
So even he knew Orndorff was strong enough not to hurt him.
Yeah. Paul was he was the guy. But anyway, but when he comes into Smoky Mountain Wrestling, Commissioner Bob Armstrong obviously informs him the piledriver is illegal. And we didn't do that just because of Orndorff. The piledriver should be illegal because that way you can work angles and get heat with it. And that's what we did in Tennessee wrestling, folks. So I had Orndorff cut promos about how automatically he's being conspired against and discriminated against. His best hold, everybody knows that, and he can't use it here. What kind of bullshit is this? And he jousts back and forth with Bob Armstrong and Bob's firm, and anytime he would tease doing a piledriver, the referee would make sure to grab the guy and stop it. No, you can't do that. And finally, and it's been so long, you may know better than me. I forget what made him flip his fucking lid, but we milked it until finally nobody had seen a piledriver. Orndorff and him hadn't been able to do the piledriver. And then finally on a TV taping, he goddamn loses his shit and not only piledrives the guy he's working with, but also I think Joey Maggs and Hector Guerrero. We ran several people in, and we had like five big jumping, leaping piledrivers, one right after another. And the last one was on Danny Davis. And God, he took the bounce, and he had the nerve damage. His hand was shaking like he had palsy, and he was whimpering because Danny could sell like crazy. And as they're carrying him out of the ring, it hurts. It hurts. Oh my God. So Orndorff had been working the program with Garvin. So, they were obviously had been involved, but I wanted to freshen it up a little bit. And so we did that angle where he just went crazy and Bob Armstrong fined him and whatever. And I think Garvin said he was going to get even or get revenge for Danny Davis, but we had Danny do a VHS tape promo from home. And he's doing the promo where he's holding the arm kind of limp and he's got the neck brace on and he's talking kind of subdued like that. But he did that. He, from the heart, as a man, I've got to do something about this. And I'm going to come back after Paul Orndorff. And his cat walks over and he's sitting on his couch, right? And gets in his lap while he's doing the promo and he's just petting the cat, right? But he's fucking doing a promo for real. I'm hurt, but as a man, I've got to come back. Well, Garvin, I can't even remember how we did this also, but we ended up booking a handicap match where Garvin came back in the picture, and it was Garvin and Danny Davis against Orndorff. And now Orndorff is bitching, wait a minute, now there's two of them. What the fuck? Because he was thinking he was going to kill Danny Davis, a guy not only smaller than him, but also who's fucking got a neck injury and can hardly use one arm. So we had Danny work with the fucking neck brace. He gets a little heat on Danny, but Ronnie would save Danny from fucking certain doom, and it kept that thing going and got the piledriver over. And that was the first person that was allowed to do the illegal piledriver in Smoky Mountain Wrestling. And after that angle, and people were carried out, and fines were levied, and the people were going crazy when all them guys were bouncing off their fucking heads. It made it something and then when Terry Funk comes in, oh my God, he's going to piledrive Bob Armstrong. Oh shit. Or, when that was the way that Bob Armstrong put me in the hospital. He gave me what was it? 2 piledrivers. It was always protected. You always saw people carried out or hurt or whatever. And there were repercussions. And that's why that people reacted to it whenever it was even teased in a match. But if I hadn't had, I was always going to make the pile driver illegal. We were always going to do, angles around the heels trying to do it or whatever. But if I hadn't had the world's best and foremost proponent of the pile driver to do that first angle on show number 18, we'd milked it for about 4 months. It wouldn't have gotten over nearly as good. And that's when Al Snow did the angle that led to the big showdown on the scaffold between him and Ricky Morton. That's what he did to Ricky. 3 pile drivers in Johnson City. And we called the ambulance, and he was carried out and put in the ambulance and driven off. And there were guys waiting for Al Snow in the fucking parking lot, and girls were crying at ringside. And we actually shot the fucking girls crying and fucking wringing their hands and clutching their pearls. And, that was because something was made out of it, and Orndorff kicked that off. And I was glad to hear from Danny Davis about, him remembering that angle, because it was fun for us to do, because it led to something, and it meant something, and it laid groundwork for something in a new promotion.
He may have had the best pile driver. He also may have had the best lockup. His collar and elbow always looked so competitive and so real.
And he brought that intensity in most everything that he did. I mean, just throwing a punch or dropping those fucking forearms or whatever, everything was intense and aggressive with Paul. And when he was on defense and when he was bumping aggressively. He didn't bump like a big muscle guy. He bumped like a fucking great worker that had the body of a big muscle guy. So, almost everything he did was just so believable and so intense, and he knew what to do for himself. Like I've said so many times, the best wrestlers are the guys that know what they should do and what they shouldn't do. Even if they can do it, the person that they're supposed to be shouldn't do it. And that wasn't hard for Paul, because he was basically the person he was supposed to be.
When I got into wrestling, it was really weird with Paul Orndorff. So I get really into wrestling in 89. And he's gone. And there were even whispers amongst the kids I knew that he was dead by that point in time. And when I started getting into it and looking back, he has such an interesting place in WWE history alone, because he, in a lot of ways, is one of the first big hires of the expansion. In 83, they bring him in. And he's aligned with Piper and Schultz. He's in the main event mix. He's in the main event for WrestleMania, yet he's not one of the first batch of action figures. He doesn't make it onto Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling. He's not one of the animated stars. And then, of course, the big run with Hogan after he turns on him. Biggest run of Hogan's title reign. And then he's not even on WrestleMania 3. And then a year later, he's gone. It's just such a weird... His WWF run, because he wasn't on the cartoon and he wasn't in Mania 3, it took me a little while to realize and appreciate just how big a star he was there.
Well, I think part of it is, when you think about it, on the cartoon, everybody had a gimmick. Paul would have been standing there in tights. And the action figures, everybody, Iron Sheik, Hulk Hogan, everybody had a gimmick or was some. Paul would have been a wrestler in tights. I don't know, even though he was so integral and was the biggest drawing house show live event program opponent that Hogan ever had, I don't know if Vince ever saw him as, marketable in those aspects. Because I wasn't aware that he didn't have a figure.
No, he had a figure, but he wasn't one of the first. Because
he didn't get the figure in commensurate with where he was at the time. That's the only thing I can imagine is maybe and on the cartoon or whatever. Because I'd never watched the cartoon, to be honest with you. But how does Hogan's biggest ever live event opponent not get or did they already have the cartoon planned out before that happened to begin with?
Well, the cartoon was planned out in 85, but he was in the mix in 85 as early on as a heel, and then the big babyface turn that eventually aligned him with Hogan, so that when he turned on Hogan, it meant something. That all happened. He became friends with Hogan and turned on Hogan within a year and a half.
Well, most people, it doesn't take that long, but that's only in private.
Do you think Ole should have had Orndorff turn on Sting instead of doing the Black Scorpion?
Oh, God, yes. Anything besides the Black Scorpion would have been an improvement, but yeah, Orndorff and Sting would have been incredible. And that's the thing, is that Orndorff was great in pretty much in whatever place you put him, as long as you put him in something Orndorff should be involved in. As a babyface tag team, him and Jimmy Snuka, we talked about in the Carolinas, was great. He was a good babyface and a good heel in Mid-South as a single. He could do pretty much everything, and all of the guys that he got in the ring with had better matches. I think if Sting if in that time period, Sting and Luger were having great matches like that, Sting and Orndorff would have been incredible.
I just think it would have been a better decision. You had Orndorff there. He was aligned with Sting as a babyface, which was kind of miscasting Orndorff, obviously. He walks off after Sting wins at Great American Bash 90, which teased something that never happened. And he was just, 4 years off the feud with Hogan. It would have been perfect for Sting's first challenger as the world champion, instead of a mystical wizard who appeared and disappeared and eventually was exposed as being Ric Flair.
But you know what? Now that you've said that, was that the time that Paul was about to take off because of the arm?
No, because, he already had the arm issue. And you know what? I actually think, everyone says he hurt his neck during the Hogan feud and he didn't want to stop because he was making all that money and that led to the atrophy in his arm. I think if you look at photos of him, even as far back as Mid-South, he already has some of the atrophy. I don't know if anyone's ever picked up on that, but if you really look at him like in 82, the atrophy's already starting at that point.
I had not looked that closely, but I can believe it because, it's all, he had wrestled a hard style and he'd been in the business for several years by that point, and it's only going to get worse. And especially, he was up there 83 through 86, especially, those were those concrete rings in the WWF. So
those concrete tours.
Oh God. But yeah, I've got, I took pictures of Orndorff in 77 in Louisville, him doing the double bicep and everything, and both arms were exactly the same. So we know he started out even in 77.
Well, everyone obviously very sad about the passing of Paul Orndorff, and we've seen lots of stories and lots of clips going around, and we send our condolences to his friends and family. And very sadly, Jim, I have to ask you about another recent passing. Chris Romero recently passed away.
Oh, yeah, and that happened last week at some point. I'm in a time warp again. Of course, the Romero family, the son of Ricky Romero, the all-time top babyface in the history of West Texas that wasn't named Funk. And, of course, Jay Youngblood's brother and Mark. I think we worked with Chris probably the least. Well, we didn't work with Jay at all, unfortunately. He passed away before we came to the Carolinas and worked in that area. I think we worked with the Youngbloods when Crockett had taken over the UWF. Does that sound right to you, O Savant?
No. You could have, and I'm not remembering it, but I remember you guys with them in 1990.
That's when it was, because they came into WCW for a little while, right? Mark and Chris.
That's
yes. Right. And really, they were a great team. Of course, all the family could work. Jay was the one that got the most notoriety, but like I said, we only worked with him a few times, and that's really the only time that I was around him on any kind of regular basis, just at the shows. So I know that it's just a shame that two out of the three brothers did Ricky Romero is obviously dead by now, right?
I'm pretty positive he is. I don't remember a date, but he was older than the Funks. Than Dory Jr. and Terry.
Right.
So I think so.
Yeah, but it's sad. Two out of the three brothers that were in the wrestling business. Was there another brother?
I'm not sure. And I mentioned on a recent show being on Terry Funk's ranch in 98. I talked with Ricky Romero there, and even though it was 98, 13 years later, he was still talking about Jay. He was still so upset about the passing of Jay. Because he brought it up to me. I wasn't going to bring it up to him.
Yeah.
He brought it up to me and started talking about it.
Yeah. Well, yes, but we our condolences there as well to the Romero family.
Unfortunately, I think the Renegade Warriors, Chris and Mark Romero, or Youngblood, in the States, they were hurt by the change in what people expected from physiques in wrestling. If they had come along 10 years earlier wrestling the same way, I think it would have been a different trajectory in the States.
Yeah, that may have been because they looked like Jay. Jay looked great, but he didn't have muscles. You know what I'm saying?
But when he was with Steamboat, Steamboat got him in the gym, so he at least looked really fit. I mean, look at him a year later after, him and Steamboat broke up. It was night and day. But one more wrestling personality I got to ask you about, because some people have asked us, they don't know too much about him. The passing of Mac McMurray, who played a very interesting role in wrestling history that a lot of people may not know.
Mac McMurray was the original investor that helped Ron Fuller get Southeastern Wrestling off the ground when he bought the territory from the Kazanas. And Mac also at the time, refereed and did all kinds of jack of all trades and office work for Ron during the Southeastern years. And as recently as, God, I don't know, just a few years ago, I was at a fan fest where I'm pretty sure he refereed. He was definitely at a number of them that I've been at over the last several years. But he was good friends with Les Thatcher. Les is the one that got him booked on the Night of Legends show. He refereed the Legends match. And then, of course, he saw the last false tag instead of the one he was supposed to see. And I didn't let him live that one down for a while. But yeah, I guess he was in his late 70s, right?
I think so. I don't remember the age, but, like you said, without him loaning Ron the money to buy Southeastern, East Tennessee wrestling would have a very different history.
Yeah, and maybe not much of a history at all, because if nobody had wanted to buy it from Kazana and he limped on for a while, it would have, because he was still doing business when they sold. He was just getting older, and Ron made an offer and saw he could do something. But if they had limped on till they petered out, then it would have been left to either the Carolinas to annex it or Jerry Jarrett to annex it. And the East Tennessee territory needed a local promotion. They didn't do well when people came in from out of town. Even sometimes, guys that were over in the town, but if it was just a different promotion. And of course, the Crockett's did good to great at some points in the Tri-Cities area until finally they got the whole thing in the mid-'80s. But Knoxville needed to be its own thing to really be successful. Ron, as a matter of fact, when he was trying to run it out of Alabama, saw that later on himself. So yeah, Mac was very important in Southeastern, which, as all the Arcadian Vanguard Network listeners know, was the model of a small regional territory.
That's right. Until Bob Roop got a hold of it. But let's move on and get some questions here, Jim. Jim, this one was sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Mark Carroll. Hey, Jim, you may have talked about this. I don't think we did. But I wanted to know, there's a recent interview with Tucker saying that Vince McMahon believes tag teams don't draw money. Why do you think he believes that?
Got it. That's a $64,000 question. And the nearest that I've been able to ascertain or surmise from just not coming out and saying to him, Vince, why the fuck you think the tag teams can't draw money? He wants individual stars. He wants individual stars that he can push exclusive of anything else going on, and that doesn't rely on that type of combinations. Everybody's an individual. That's the only thing I've been able to come up with. I don't know. It's not like it was in his upbringing.
Rocca and Perez were the biggest attraction for his dad.
I know Rocca and Perez were the biggest attraction in wrestling when they were a team, and for his dad. And then in the 70s, the Valiant Brothers and all the WWF teams and in the 80s, all the teams that he got, because they were already ready-made, he didn't really make any of them. The Hart Foundation were already together. The Rockers were already together. Well, Demolition was already together, and they called themselves the Road Warriors. But you know what? After the tag teams that he signed away from the territories, he never made any more. And Owen and Davey were still a team. They'd been a team because they were family, but he never really made any more teams, and he just wanted individuals. And the only time a tag team match would main event pay-per-views, if you remember, was when it was Shawn Michaels and Diesel versus Bret Hart and The Undertaker, or 4 individual stars teamed up. So I don't know why. Other than that, everybody's an individual, but it's just, it sucks.
And we should say for the record, it's not historically true. Tag teams have drawn extraordinary money.
Well, of course. I didn't think we had to say that. Of course, no. Historically, it's far from the truth. It's ridiculous. There were territories, Carolinas being one, that were based for years around tag team wrestling. The Midnight and the Rock and Roll set gate records in a variety of places that would stand at the time for the NWA or the WWF. So, yes, and the Road Warriors, need I go on? So, it's not true, but he thinks it is. Therefore, it becomes that way.
You brought up the Road Warriors. It got me thinking about something I talked about not too long ago with Mike Mills, of course, my co-host on the Mid-South Wrestling Television Review podcast and from Booking the Territory. Are the Mad Max films the most influential films on the wrestling business? Considering you get multiple Lord Humonguses, of course, the Road Warriors, which influences various other people. Various people have the look from the movie, from T.J. Khan to the Barbarian. Of course, the Missing Link becomes the Missing Link, and originally they say his name is Max, the Missing Link.
Yeah.
What movies do you think, if not Mad Max and the series of movies, what movie is the most influential on the wrestling business itself?
I think you've already answered the question, because there's always imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, right? Anytime something gets over, and if you notice in any kind of entertainment, if a style of or type of music is hitting, then that's what the record companies used to at least always try to put out. Or, when Westerns were a thing on TV, there were 45 Westerns, and then there was sitcoms, and there's cop shows, and whatever. In wrestling, you copy gimmicks. And, all of our listeners are historians and know that Gorgeous George wasn't the first bleached blonde with the robe and the whole nine. Yeah, he just took a lot of other people's stuff and put it all together, but that got over. And then suddenly there was tons of Gorgeous Georges. Or Nature Boy Buddy Rogers, there was tons of bleached blonde guys with good fucking physiques calling themselves Nature Boys and or doing his shit, et cetera, et cetera. With the Rock and Roll Express, it wasn't a movie that inspired that. Actually, it was the Fabulous Ones that were the direct inspiration, but it was MTV itself. And the Fabs were the first MTV-style tag team just because Jarrett put them together, did a music video, used rock and roll music, and played it on that's their connection to MTV. But the Fabs didn't look anything like. They were doing the ZZ Top videos, but the original Fab videos, they didn't look anything like anybody on MTV. They looked like the updated Fabulous Fargos. But the Rock and Roll Express, for a slightly younger audience, because they were like the teeny bopper version of, Stan and Steve were like fucking porn for the women, and the rock and roll were kind of like, oh, it's Sean Cassidy again. But they were dressing like the bands dressed on MTV, so it wasn't specifically a movie. And then everybody copied the Rock and Roll Express. The Midnight Express was the name of a movie.
That's right.
And we used the theme music, but actually when Dennis took the name Midnight Express, they didn't use the movie music. He didn't know about it. They used Here Comes the Express by BT Express, which had train whistles and everything. Oh, my God. I know, but him and Randy Rose and Norvell Austin, they made it work somehow. But when you heard the train whistles and and you could see the afros bouncing on Soul Train, because that was it was like a 1972 fucking BT Express track. But the movie influenced the name, and then I suggested the music in Mid-South, and who's to say all the heel expresses imitated the Midnight Express and all the baby faces imitated the Rock and Roll Express, but it wasn't technically a movie. What other gimmicks ran wild back when they could do that when there were multiple companies? And
I mean, I don't know if it was the same day, but certainly around the same time, I have to say it's quite impressive. From outer space, Darth Vader made a lot of shots in the late 70s around the United States, in Detroit and Memphis. He was all over the place.
He never got over long enough to stay in any one territory, but for about 2 weeks in a row, everybody had Darth Vader. God damn it, who was the one in Memphis? Lawler went. He didn't even he wore black long tights and no shirt, and then he had the Darth Vader helmet and a black cape. They wouldn't spend the money for the whole outfit. But it was, I can't even remember who it was, but yeah, there were a lot of Darth Vaders for just briefly. But there was Spider-Man. Oh. The only comic character that lasted was Batman Tony Marino in Pittsburgh.
I got a movie that's an interesting pick. Billy Jack.
Ooh. Not only did he inspire Billy Jack Haynes himself and his style of hat wear, but Billy Jack did more, at least at the start in the early 70s, in the United States to get karate and martial arts over than anybody until Bruce Lee, and maybe some after that. Because everybody, I'm going to take my right foot and kick you on the right side of your face. All that shit. There was a few people that adopted some stylings from that movie, but not nearly as many as the Road Warrior. Because goddamn, how many humongouses alone? Sid was humongous. Jeff Van Camp Louisville was humongous.
Who are we forgetting?
Wasn't oh goddamn it, somebody else was humongous.
Mike Stallings?
Mike Stark.
Mike Stark, that's what I'm thinking of.
Humongous from Memphis, former
right.
USFL football player. Mike Stallings was a hell of an athletic young man from, I believe, Georgia in the 70s.
Jeff Gaylord was never Lord Humongous, was he?
Only in his dreams.
Oh, that was funny. Now that was funny. Hey, is there a more influential song? Well, I shouldn't say that. I was going to say, than Bad Bad Leroy Brown, just because you got two characters out of that song. But I'm sure there has to be something. I mean, Nature Boy, obviously maybe the most influential song now that I think about it.
Well, but now here I read, where did I read this? Maybe, was it Tim Hornbaker's fine publication on Buddy Rogers? But the Nature Boy that most people have thought came from the song by Nat King Cole, the song by Nat King Cole may have come from a popular phrase at the time, which was Nature Boy. And the idea of Nature Boy Buddy Rogers may have come from just that phrase in the 30s and 40s rather than the song. I forget where I've just read that sometime recently.
So then we could argue if Nature Boy, the song, is influential at all. It's either very influential or not at all.
Or just a byproduct.
That's right.
I do not know.
All right, well, let's get another question here, Jim. This one, sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com, is from Fernando in San Antonio, Texas, a longtime fan and listener.
I thought he was going to be from Valenzuela.
What team did Fernando Valenzuela pitch for?
I don't have a goddamn clue. I just remember the name.
Here's Fernando's question. By the way, Dodgers is the answer.
That's what we were looking for.
One day, flipping through some old NWA videos, I noticed in your interviews, you wore glasses mostly. The one and only video interview I have seen ever from you wearing some, Fernando may not word the emails correctly, but let me rephrase this. He saw an interview where you were wearing dark aviator sunglasses. So, Jim, during that indoor interview on TBS that Saturday, were you high?
No, and I'm trying to think of exactly which one he might be talking about, because there was a tuple. Now I'm high now, apparently. There was a couple of times that I wore sunglasses as part of a bit that I was doing. I remember I wore sunglasses that had swans on top of them. I think when I came back from Hawaii, I'd got them in some goofy gift shop, and I had a Hawaiian outfit on one of the shows. I don't think that wasn't the same one that I gave Tony his lei from Hawaii. Told him it was the only lei he's ever going to get. There was another time I think we did I did a mock-up of Jimmy Garvin and Precious, where didn't I come out and had sunglasses on and a Jimmy Garvin wig, and then the boys unreeled what I said was a poster of Precious, and it was the world's fattest woman in a bikini. If I was wearing, I've never worn sunglasses in my life for the purpose of blocking sun, because I've worn regular glasses since I was a little kid. I don't like the clip-on shit. I can't see as well. I wasn't going to go and get prescription sunglasses, because what the fuck? I've just put the sun visor down in the car or look away from the sun. So if I was wearing sunglasses, it was in the process of doing a bit, as the young folks say.
Perhaps you were wearing sunglasses because you didn't have a good night's sleep.
You know, I was hoping you were going to go there, because I'll tell you what, I've mentioned this, but the pandemic has been the best thing for my sleeping patterns. I've slept the best I've slept in my adult life since I've been home all the time, because you know why? Because those hotels, they do not have mattresses from Helix Sleep. And that, you know, I've been to some hotels where sleeping on their mattresses like trying to curl up on a bag of dirty golf balls. I'm telling you, you get a wide variety of these mattresses, and you get a wide variety of these crummy, substandard, lumpy mattresses in your home as well. Even some of these fine mattress stores that you go to, they'll bring it in and it's like curling up on your kids' beanbags. Well, I'll tell you, folks, with the Helix Sleep mattress and the time that I have had to spend time in my home and curl up upon it, I've slept like I'm floating in the clouds, and you can too, because it's a revolutionary concept in mattresses. They have a quiz at Helix Sleep. That's HELIX, helixsleep.com. They have a quiz you fill out. It takes 2 minutes. You match your body type, your sleep preferences, and they basically give you the suggestion of the mattress they have that will be most tailor-made for you. They've got soft, medium, and firm. They've got mattresses for cooling down if you sleep hot. They've got mattresses for plus-size folks. Do you like to sleep on your back or your side, or do you move around? You tell them all this stuff. They set you up with the right mattress. You order it. It comes right to your door, shipped for free, in a box that you can take and put where you want it easily. And then the magic of the unboxing, where you just take it out of the box, you get the plastic sleeve off and watch it come to life. The #1 best overall mattress pick of 2020 by GQ and Wired magazines. This thing is awesome. So go to helixsleep.com/JCE. Take the 2-minute sleep quiz, get matched to a customized mattress that'll give you the best sleep of your life, which, by the way, has a 10-year warranty, and you get to try it out for 100 nights risk-free. They will even pick it up if you don't love it. I don't know what in the world would be the matter with you. But Helix is offering up to $200 off all mattress orders and 2 free pillows for our listeners. Actually, not Brian's, just mine, at helixsleep.com/JCE. Hayes for horses, we ain't in the woods. That's helixsleep.com/JCE. Up to $200 off all mattresses and 2 free pillows. Don't sleep on some soggy, saggy old bag at night. Get a divorce and a Helix Sleep mattress, and you'll sleep much better.
All right, Jim. Well, let's get another question here. Speaking of saggy bags, this next one was sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Mike Kuzmuck, and he sent a link.
Wait, what?
Mike Kuzmuck?
Mike Kuzmuck?
What's your problem? Mike Kuzmuck.
How do you spell that?
Kuzmuk.
Kuzmuck.
That's what I said. Well, Mr. Kuzmuck.
Rooting around down in the Kuzmuck.
Mr. Kuzmuck has a question related to a interview recently. Sent a link here. Jim, have you seen any quotes from a recent appearance by Josh Barnett on Sean Waltman's new show, Pro Wrestling for Life?
Actually, what I heard, I did not read the comments, but I heard that he was talking about, if it's the same one I'm thinking about, that the Young Bucks don't like him.
That is correct. So you didn't read the
well,
quotes.
Then I would love to hear the comments because I lost it before I had a chance to go and read it.
Okay, here are the quotes. And once again, this is from Sean Waltman's show, Pro Wrestling for Life. Asked about his friction with the Young Bucks, quote, I don't know what their deal is. I don't know who riled them up into thinking that me and JR were burying them all the time because we weren't. One of the things that I think was a problem is they wanted to be cool, but I'm like, you're heels. You're constantly cheating and breaking the rules and doing heel stuff, so we're going to say you're despicable. We're going to say you're terrible and horrible and you're bad people. We didn't say that you sucked. We just said that you're bad guys because that was your job. Your job was to be the bad guys. But it seems like no one wants to be an actual heel anymore. Everyone wants to be the cool anti-hero or cool bad guy. They want to sell all their merch. No, I'm sorry. If you're a heel, be a heel. Stop trying to worry about whether the fans like you or not. You have a role to fill here, and if you want to run around telling people to suck it, then people should want to see you get your teeth kicked in. That's just the way it is. And nobody wants to be a heel, and that's a problem. And somebody riled up the Bucks. I don't know how. Whatever. They used to get into Twitter fights constantly anyways. I never actually had a discussion with them, and yet I would constantly cover for them in their matches. They go to hit their Meltzer driver. They do all this crazy stuff that just gets them a 2 count. My thoughts are, well, I don't want this to seem like it was shit, or it was weak, or it was just a hope spot, or it's just getting their shit in. I don't want people to view that. I want to say, well, okay, you could see that Matt, when he came off the ropes, he didn't get his feet all the way on the help of that pile driver. I don't want to belittle what they're doing. I want them to feel okay. If they hit it perfectly, the match is over. But they're tired. It's tough. People are sweaty. Things are happening. The dude's in the air flipping to give his assisted tombstone. Okay, a lot of things can happen, can miss. And you get guys that always got to knock a dude out of the ring. They always got to flip over it. Okay, fine. Regardless if this happens at every match leading up to this, but whatever. I'm not agenting things. I'm only dealing with what's on television. So even then, I want to be like, oh, you could see in the slow-mo he only caught a piece of him, and that maybe that even caused him some injury too. I was always trying to find a way to say that nobody here is weak, nobody sucks. This is just what happens when you go to war. When you're in combat, things don't always work out how you want them to. You hit a 450 and boom, but you don't get the 3 count. Maybe he just didn't have the leg hooked enough. It's not that you aren't capable, it's just one little thing, and that's how close the margin should be between these competitors. So there's some of Josh Barnett's thoughts on the Young Bucks, and overall, just a great look at how you should do commentary in wrestling.
I give it again. Jesus Christ, and a guy that's not even been in our business, made little guest appearances, gets it better than these fucking clowns that are supposedly in it for 20 years. Yes, you're not criticizing a guy saying he sucks when you have to, an announcer having to explain the inexplicable is the worst feeling to an announcer in the world, right? When there's shit going on, you're just like, oh, fuck, there's no way I can possibly make this believable. But in matches where I can see where Josh Barnett is rightfully looking at this from a sports presentation, because that's what it's supposed to be, especially in Japan, and he's trying to come up with a reason why these guys are hitting all these moves, but they're not winning anything. Well, I mean, he didn't get all of it. You know, it can be just that close. Boom. He's viewing this like a sport because he comes from a sports background and a fighting background. And that's exactly the way that you should view wrestling in your public performances or pronouncements just like it's legitimate, like it's a sport. You understand that it's not. You're smart enough to understand the psychology of the thing, but you treat it for the public like it is. And you explain, well, he might not have been able to kick out of that if he'd have got all of it, just like Barnett was saying, but he, was just off balance. It can be just that close. Anything can happen. If he hits that right, the guy's toast, whatever. He's trying to basically make excuses for clean up some of the Young Bucks' goofiness, and they think he's knocking them because they are so far away from what this business ought to be and the way it ought to be viewed and presented, that they think that he's knocking them when he's actually trying to clean up after their mess. So yeah, I can see that. And apparently with these two little fucking brats, everything in their heads revolves around them, because an announcer just saying innocuous shit about he's trying to sabotage them so they won't sell their merchandise. Or, everybody that has any criticism of them whatsoever, he's obviously fucking crazy because we're the greatest. Or they somehow inflate their own image or self-worth or desirability in their heads. Like when I, being a smartass, walk by, hey, Bucks, we got the only angle in wrestling people believe, and walk out. Suddenly I want to go on tour with them for months and work this angle. Instead of just it's actually, guys, somebody can just make a smart-ass comment to y'all every once in a while. But see, they don't understand that kind of shit. They can't accept the criticism of their goofiness because deep down, they know that they're goofy, and they know that their goofiness is the only way that they can get over, because they can't do it based on anything else, because the way they look and the way they act. But goofiness works for them. It just makes everybody else look bad. They can't accept that other people just can't get on board with this whole they're the greatest tag team in the world thing. And if somebody does try to do some kind of legitimate pro wrestling presentation around them, they're offended by it. That's why they have to have their handpicked referee, because he's the most dickless, feckless, useless milksop of a wet dish rag that's ever worn stripes, and that's what they need to have their match, because they can't do it right. So everybody's got to play along with their shit, or elsewise they pout and they fucking rip pubic hair off their faces and pitch a tantrum.
Pussies.
Actually, I don't think they've seen many of those.
I'm pretty sure they married the first one they saw. But anyway.
Well, that would have been each other then. Can brothers married in California?
You're on a roll today. You are on a roll today. You're doing good today. Well,
hey, kick me off the internet for a couple days, see what happens.
Let's get all of our AEW questions out of the way right now.
Please.
Jim, another popular topic. I don't know how much of this you've seen. I wasn't totally aware of everything. I had heard whispers a while back, but we received a flood of emails. Whispers, stories. But we received a lot of emails and even some tweets about Kenny Omega's comments about the audience of this show and all of the Jim Cornette programs being low IQ, and his tweet where he said it's finally time to assume some responsibility and dial the online persona back a bit. Of course, what he forgot is that it's not an online persona, but this triggered a lot of the low IQ listeners.
I just luckily haven't spent much time around him in person, or he'd know that it's a full-time persona.
But this apparently triggered some of what he called our low IQ audience here to send in something. I'm going to read two different emails because it covers it from two different ways. Tell me what you know about this, if anything.
All right.
This one was sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Crappy King Dre. Hello, Jim. I recently seen comments Omega made on the Sportster in 2018 for booking and producing a known convicted child sex offender.
What?
At, I think it's CEO X New Japan Pro Wrestling. I don't know how exactly they pronounce that. At their event. In the statement, Omega said that he met the offender in 2004. The offender was convicted in 2011, and there are pics of Omega and the offender together in 2016. The child sex offender brags on a podcast that AEW rented his ring for the Darby and Sting versus Team Taz street fight.
Oh, wait a minute. Okay,
May.
I heard something about this, that there was some stink because they rented a ring from somebody who had a sordid past. I remember that from what? Was it not even a couple of years ago.
No, well, this is...
They have been around that long.
Yeah, well, that was a couple of years ago. The Darby and Sting match was just a couple of months ago, but...
wait a minute. This was they rented a ring again from the same guy that people were complaining they rented a ring from before because he's a sex offender?
Again, just based on this email, the quote, what the email says is the child sex offender brags on a podcast. AEW rented his ring for the Darby and Sting versus Team Taz pay-per-view street fight, May 2021.
Oh, wait, that was that cinematic thing, right?
Correct. Yes.
So this wasn't a show where they had to advertise anything or anybody had to be seen putting a ring up. It was over in the warehouse somewhere, so they called the offensive person and said, hey, send your ring over.
Do you think Kenny Omega has a low IQ for constantly helping a convicted child sex offender? Hashtag AEW running a sloppy shop.
Jesus. No, I honestly think Kenny Omega just has a low IQ in general and is fucking dull-witted and goddamn boring and fucking a shitty wrestler, but, that's just my opinion.
Well, again, a lot of people were triggered by Kenny's behavior online and started pointing to this. Another email here, CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Mike. Hi, Jim. Did you happen to notice the hypocrisy of one Kenny Omega on Twitter when he said you should, quote, assume some responsibility for the idiot fan running in on AEW? In 2018, he booked an actual sex offender. Do you want me to say the guy's name or not?
Well, can we get in trouble? Or is it public record?
It's public record.
I think our hands are clean.
An actual sex offender named Chasen Rance. What a name.
Chasen Rance.
What a stupid name.
Chasen Fame.
At one of his CEO times New Japan Pro Wrestling shows, and certainly didn't take any responsibility.
Wait a minute, what is a CEO times New Japan Pro Wrestling show? What now? Do they have Olivier actually booking spots?
Oh, you know what that is?
Something.
I think I know what it's the computer electronics thing. Remember they did the match where him and the Bucks dressed up like video game idiots? Like they were in Street Fighter 2? Yeah, that's what
I remember seeing pictures of them. No, they did that on their TV.
Yeah. I think that may have been one of these events, but...
So this is just... Okay, so he's got a child sex offender at a video game convention?
Well, let me just bring up...
Why not give the arsonist a can of gasoline and a blowtorch?
When this was first happening a few years ago, this quote here is from 2018, and people were getting on Kenny, who stresses that whoever it is that encourages fan needs to accept responsibility. Here's his quote. I don't even feel it's worth my time to respond to people that peg me guilty before proven innocent. Yeah, let's talk a ton of shit about a guy, and if he doesn't run to defend himself, to my negative comments, he's a bad guy. Really? You want an answer? Try kindness, politeness. That was Kenny's response, apparently, to people calling him out for booking what apparently was a convicted child sex predator to be involved with AEW. This fucking clown.
That's the thing, this fucking clown. When he told me it's my fault and that I should dial my persona back, and I answered him, I don't have one because I'm not a phony fucking asshole like you are, dipshit. And fuck off. Basically, he wrote back, well, I've admired your work on Dark Side of the Ring and think you're a great historian and wish you nothing but the best and well in life. And then a bunch of people, see, oh, Kenny, he's a heck of a guy. He's trying to be the big. No, he's a fucking smartass.
He was told to dial it back.
Either that or somebody told him to dial it back.
That's right. That's right.
But he's obviously, it's tongue in cheek. That's like as phony as a get well card from an Undertaker. So, but I guess his milksop Casper Milquetoast fans that he has believe when he's disingenuous and complimentary toward people.
There is an overall disingenuousness from that whole Young Bucks Omega camp. It's not all of AEW. It's specific to the douchebag camp. Completely disingenuous. And you know what's an interesting exercise? Now, some people in life, sometimes they get bitter about business deals that go wrong. That happens. But even when talking to them, the truth comes out. Go talk to Ring of Honor people about the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega. That's some interesting stuff you hear about the manipulation and the douchiness. But that's all I have to say about that.
Maybe we ought to change their name. Instead of the Cucamonga Kids, we ought to call them the Massengill Bunch.
I don't know about that.
Anyway.
Well, Jim, our next question.
Which one do you think has the biggest nozzle?
This next question, Jim, sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com.
I'm going for 3 today on you, pal.
This is from Ali Sabahi in Mashhad, Iran.
Oh, seriously.
I really believe this is from Ali Sabahi, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, Ali, from Mashhad, Iran. Hello, Jim.
I can hear Khosrow now. I come from Tehran, Iran. Huh. I go to gym, work out hard.
Do you think he was insulted at all or just happy he got a paycheck when Vince says, I want to bring you back, but I'm going to make you an Iraqi?
I think he was probably just happy with the check.
Considering the long history between Iran and Iraq. But here is Ali's question.
Considering the long history between Iron Sheik and making any money at that point in time.
Before we go Bill Watts and get all geopolitical here, let's get to this question from Ali. Dave Meltzer has said that something huge and something big is coming to AEW, a huge star, and possibly it'll happen on September 22nd at the Grand Slam event. Last time Dave said...
I saw one of those blood runs cold spots. I know something big's going to happen.
Last time Dave said that Christian Cage is coming to AEW, and it was true. Now he is talking about a big star, and only 2 names come to my mind, Daniel Bryan and CM Punk. What do you think? Who is more possible to ever join AEW between these two? And who do you think the big name that may be jumping or maybe appearing on AEW is?
Well, now let's just hold on, Cowboy. Because for one thing, by the way, I saw Twitter since I've been able to get back on that. Somebody had the best statement on Twitter I've heard all month. Dave Meltzer got post-concussion syndrome from taking bumps on Twitter. Dave says things are big a lot more than he used to. I mean, he's giving 5 and 6 stars to TV matches or whatever the fuck, right? And a girls match got more than most Flair Steamboat fucking matches. And I think in his mind, he thinks some of these things are a little bit bigger when they apply to AEW than they would be when they apply to anything else. But having said that, I think the more likely, if either of the two can be considered likely, I don't even know if I would say that. Maybe the less unlikely one to show up would be Daniel Bryan. Because I can see him possibly being motivated by a large paycheck and also the opportunity to work in a new environment and do more of his own shit. I think CM Punk made his, and we already know that Bryan will acquiesce more to the entertainment side of things and is a little bit easier to do because he still loves what he's doing, whereas Punk has said he didn't want to be another guy doing bad TV, and I believe him, and that's what he'd be doing over there. So of the two of them, it would be Daniel Bryan, but I don't know that either one is likely because Bryan's wife is still under contract to the Evil Empire and in the family. That might be awkward at Thanksgiving and Christmas when, the Laurinaitis clan sits down if one of the members had absconded to AEW. But I mean, I think it's going to be somebody that if it is somebody, I don't know. I haven't seen the prediction by Dave. I don't know who it might be. It'll probably be somebody that Dave thinks is a big deal, but that many of us might go, eh.
Well, let's pretend it is going to be a big deal because it is a big deal that they're running the Arthur Ashe Tennis Stadium in New York. They're advertising the hell out of it locally on WFAN, the biggest sports radio station in the country, right here in New York. Who knows what they're going to do? I heard from people this week saying they're going to sell out, and I said, That's the first I've heard anyone predict a sellout. It's going to be interesting. But
now, did somebody just say they were going to sell out, or are they predicting a sellout based on ticket sales?
I heard it based on nothing but buzz. Then I heard it from a couple other people. So it just says that people are buzzing about it. This is a big event. If Tony Khan really did want to make a big splash and the person was out there to do it with, who do you think is still there that would be a genuine, to use the words here, huge or big surprise or big person coming to AEW? I mean, Punk and Bryan are two of the big ones. I think Lesnar may be bigger than both of them.
Oh, God, yeah.
Who else is out there that would genuinely be at that level? I mean, even if you got Austin to do something, he can't wrestle, so it's not the same.
No, it's not going to be Steve Austin. Steve Austin will not be appearing that night, or I will publicly apologize to Ed and also honk like a duck or a goose on the show the following week if Steve Austin. Honk, honk. I'll do that and apologize. I said I probably, had I not signed a non-disclosure agreement, I would have said to Tony Khan on the times that I did talk to him originally that he ought to fucking give CM Punk all the money that he wanted and then worry about everything else later on. But if Brock Lesnar is very mercenary, and if he was willing to just give him millions of dollars to do very little, I can see Brock might take it. I can see Heyman might say, you know what? Go ahead. For that much money, Brock would be bigger than anything else they could do.
Well, let me stop you right there. You think Brock Lesnar signing with AEW would be the biggest possible signing they can get?
I don't see how. Who could be bigger and that could actually wrestle? Yes, it would be shocking if they signed Steve Austin to come and do whatever, but he ain't going to wrestle and it ain't going to happen. And they ain't going to sign the fucking Rock. He's probably booked that day anyway. There's a fucking flea market open down the road. So who else would be a bigger shock, a bigger box office attraction, a bigger splash than the biggest box office attraction that Vince McMahon has had over the last few years, which has been Brock Lesnar or John Cena?
I was going to say the top level would be Lesnar, Cena, and of course, and I don't think it's realistic, Dwayne Johnson would be the ultimate one.
No, that ain't happening. And Cena is not going to happen either, for fuck's sake. He is not going to, he doesn't need the money. He's not going to turn his back on Vince McMahon in a 20-year relationship and that is involved movies and I'm sure the Hall of Fame and blah, blah, blah. Brock Lesnar don't give a fuck for anything or anybody except himself. That's why I believe he would just take a large amount of money to do something. And he doesn't care about wrestling. He doesn't care about sentiment or nostalgia or history or whatever the fuck. And I would think Happy Heyman would probably say, tell Vince so that he'll offer you X so that you can get Y from over there. I could believe Brock Lesnar if he got several $1 million for very limited amount of work.
Would Tony sign Sable to get Brock?
I'm sure Sable would not even want to be signed at this point, and I'm sure Brock wouldn't want her to be signed. I don't think that would even enter into it. But the thing is, none of the people at this level need the money, and they also realize that if they do something like that and Vince views it incorrectly, or maybe more importantly, Stephanie or Triple H hold a grudge, they might think, well, Vince in a few years, but if they're pissed, they don't want to sacrifice that relationship they've had and that a guy that's made them millions of dollars they're tied up to he owns most of the catalog of their footage and the rights to market it. And they've done movies that have been released in conjunction with the blah, blah, blah. They're not going to blow all that off. That's why I was, Big Show and Mark Henry have both said, Vince said, you know what? Go and have a good time.
Yeah, if we want to figure out who's going to be the next one, who was the last legend they disrespected? Because it was Christian, Mark Henry, and Big Show, and they all ended up here. Who was the most recent? Was it Flair? I'm trying to remember. Who was the most recent legend to be disrespected?
Hey, you know what? We didn't say it had to be a wrestler, and considering Tony Khan's fandom and that it would be a shock and it's New York, Woo!
Do you think Flair? I think it would be a good move for AEW because you get publicity. He's a great guy to have out there if he's in the right frame of mind talking to the press. He's on commercials. Everyone loves and knows Ric Flair. Do you really think Ric Flair would leave the McMahons?
Well,
he's lent Rick money in the past. He's helped him out. Rick knows he has a job there. He's tight with Triple H. His daughter is there.
Well, but Charlotte's bulletproof because she's on top, and they also made Rick look like a complete fucking idiot. The last time he was on a TV with the deal where they were splitting him up with Charlotte, and he was in love with what's he?
Oh, what was her name? She got pregnant. Lacey Evans.
And for the first time ever, not because of Rick. So that's 2.5. So 2 3/4. So, I mean, I don't know, but if you're looking for somebody that would be a jaw dropper to put in the ring, it's got to be a Punk, a Danielson, or a Lesnar, or elsewise it comes off as, or something that to that audience might be. I mean, to that audience, they would go crazy if Onita showed up and wore his leather jacket and fucking got in the ring and hit somebody with a barbed wire baseball bat.
Okada would be a big deal. If all of a sudden Okada showed up, because they've had some of the other guys from New Japan, but not Okada. That would be a pretty big deal, I think, for a lot of people. But let me ask you this.
For the fans there, it would, but that would get them absolutely zero press, because if Okada came out in the middle of the Arthur Ashe Stadium, every single person in the stadium would pop and scream and throw babies. And if he walked out the front door of the stadium, the rest of New York City, not a son of a bitch could recognize him. So he's not going to get any press.
They'll get a lot of wrestling press, but what it means to anyone outside of that is another question. But let me ask you to tie this all up. If AEW got Lesnar or Danielson or Punk, and taking your personal feelings for any of the talent they're out of the equation, they have a booker who seemingly has a long-term plan in his own head for Omega as the champion. We all think it's leading to Adam Page down the road. Whatever it is, the booker has a plan, whether we like it or not. If you get one of those three guys, do you throw your plans out?
You think?
Do you instantly put the belt on them? Do they need a belt?
If your house catches on fire, do you run and grab a hose? You didn't need the hose a minute ago. You had perfectly fine plans for the afternoon. You were going to watch TV. You were going to cook some barbecue. Maybe, rub one out. The Four Sisters on Thumb Street. Those were your plans. But suddenly, the house is on fire. Now your plan is grab a fucking hose. If Brock Lesnar comes in, he immediately mows down everyone except the person that you decide is going to be the one to beat him in about a year. And you fucking find something for that guy to do where he's trapped on a fucking cruise ship most of the time when Lesnar's running wild. If it's Punk or Bryan, then you immediately say, okay, who are the 4 or 5 people that you want to beat on your way to Twinkle Toes? And then how do you want to make this switch? And how do you want to keep the program going? Otherwise, why fucking bother?
If you're going to get Brock, and Heyman doesn't have a long-term deal, do you try to get Heyman too?
Well, Paul E he's way too smart for that, because he's not going to. Remember when he made the offer to Dixie? Well, yes, if you give me part ownership in the company, then I'll come in and turn it around for you. That's because he knew that was something she was not going to give. That way he could be the babyface and say, well, I gave him an offer. I was willing to come in and fix it, because he knew it was unfixable and it would kill his reputation. So he gave them an offer they would not accept so that his hands were clean. He tried, but yet he didn't get put in a position where, it's not I'm knocking Paul, nobody else could have fixed it either. And so in this case, I'm pretty sure that he would be content to fucking talk to Brock on the phone and give him some fucking ideas from afar and still take Vince's money to work with Roman Reigns. I'm sure Tony could make a run at him, and I'm sure that Paul E would either figure out how to be equal partners in everything the Khan family owns or figure out a way to wiggle out of it.
Hey, Paul, how would you like your own video game?
Hey, Paul, how would you like your own professional sports team? I can see that getting his attention.
The Scarsdale Penguins. Well,
and they can all be wearing the tuxedo that Paulie wore with the tuxedo match. The little Scarsdale Penguins. Look here, they come in their tuxes. Oh, Christ. Oh, help me.
Well, you know, Jim, to take us away from all these hijinks, some of these fans attending this big stadium show, Arthur Ashe can't fucking talk.
Or Arthur Ashe. The Arthur Ashe Stadium will be
the back. Arthur Ashe Tennis Stadium in Queens, New York. That's coming up for AEW. Some fans may hear this segment and be disappointed there isn't a big surprise. They may think they were ripped off, lied to, misled by whoever it may be.
Malfeasance.
They may want
switch.
That's right. And they may want revenge.
They may want, well, no, we don't want them to seek revenge. We don't want them to get any type of revenge. No, what we want them to get, Brian, is compensated for their aggrieved injury, not revenge. And I can guarantee you that you may feel, however, folks, like you're getting revenge when you get compensated if you've had a grievous injury done to you, or some type of harm has befallen you, or you have been cheated, or hoodwinked, bamboozled, flim-flammed, conned, even, so to speak. There's one man to turn to, but not for revenge.
Call Stephen P. News. If you need to sue. An outlaw mud show or two. Still sue the rest.
Yes, that's why we often say get even with Steven, not get revenge with Steven. Because when you get even with Steven, you're just getting back to where you were before you were inconvenienced and thrown off your normal course of life where you were free to pursue a happy existence of religious freedom and joy for all. Folks, Stephen P. New at newlawoffice.com, 888-692-8084 can rectify legally any of your issues. If you've been one of those people that's been poisoned by bad groundwater caused by these chemical companies, or whether the defective earplugs that 3M gave our service members and caused damage to their hearing, people that were assaulted at the Veterans Administration Hospital. We've talked about those verdicts that are starting to come in, and Stephen's involved in, of course, all of the class action suits. He even got $50-something thousand for a poor old lady that State Farm was trying to jerk around lately. And we have heard now, this is the big news, and this, I've got to go downstairs because we just heard this as we were going on the air and check Stacy's CPAP machine, those breathing machines. I know a bunch of people that Jim Ross has that. He said it can save your life. But now the Philips CPAP machines are being recalled for causing cancer. The seal around the mouth guard breaks down, and when inhaled, is not only shown to cause cancer, but Philips has hidden this. They've known about it, but they've hidden that knowledge for many years now, and they have been found out. And Stephen P. New is one of the warriors for justice that is about to bring them crashing down to reality on not letting people know about this bullshit while they continue to profit off of it. So, if you know somebody that's been profiting off of bullshit and you have been infringed upon as a result of it, Stephen P. New, newlawoffice.com, 888-692-8084. And, of course, he is the title sponsor for the big bash in Beckley on August the 7th from All-Star Wrestling and our friend Gary Damron over there. And you can look up All-Star Wrestling on Facebook, or you could also look up the August 7th bash in Beckley at the Raleigh County Convention Center. Scene of some of my greatest triumphs and some of my greatest lawsuits, and get all the information on how to be a part of that. CPAP. Now, you can't even get a good night's sleep except if you're on a Helix mattress, but if you're wearing a Philips CPAP machine, you could be in deep shit.
You bring up West Virginia. I don't know why, but for some reason, after we talked about the ghost and Mr. Chicken, several people, I don't even think it came up, emailed me that Don Knotts is from West Virginia. Like I said, I'm not disputing the fact, but I don't know why people started sending this to me.
Well, because you're so, Brian, you're so in the dark on when I got several actually tweet messages I looked through this morning when I got back on, and I got an email also saying that you are defective for when you answered,
"What?
I have never seen the ghost of Mr. Chicken." When you said those words, you doomed yourself. They've got television all over the place in this country, and you've never seen the ghost of Mr. Chicken.
You've never seen the Monster Squad. You've never seen the King of Kong.
Oh, but goddamn. The ghost of Mr. Chicken had 30 years on those movies, which I'm going to watch.
When?
As soon as possible, so I can get you and the rest of your supporters off my back.
The Legion of Last.
The Legion of Last is on me about Monster Squad and King of Kong. I got to make some time. But anyway, Don Knotts, fine man from West Virginia, just like Stephen P. New. Stephen's a little meatier, a little fleshier than Don was.
Do you like his other movies that he did in the 60s?
The Incredible Mr. Limpet. I saw that in the theater. That is another classic. As well as somebody mentioned The Reluctant Astronaut. I like The Shakiest Gun in the West. The Love God was really, it was a change of pace for Don, and I was not as big of a fan there. But The Ghost of Mr. Chicken stands alone, I think. Just for the cast and the everything came together. The script, the cast, the music. It's just magic.
And I know you love the Andy Griffith Show. Would you have preferred Don Knotts stay on the show and not make any of those movies? Or are you happy he left to make the movies?
Ooh, well, anything that got us the Ghost of Mr. Chicken, I will accept that.
Don Knotts leaving after 5 years got you the Ghost of Mr. Chicken.
Got me the Ghost of Mr. Chicken. And then Andy only had 3 more years, and one or two of those was in color and just killed the whole charm of the thing.
That's right. Well, Jim, let's get some more questions.
But I'll never forgive them for the way they treated poor Howard McNear, Floyd the Barber. They kicked him out. They let him sit there for a while, but when he couldn't stand up, if you notice, after the first season or two, Floyd was always sitting. But then, goddamn, along came Howard Sprague, and Howard didn't fit.
You ever see on SCTV, Eugene Levy years ago did an amazing Floyd the Barber after Floyd had the stroke. It was pretty funny though.
Stop it. Things are not to be joked about.
All right, well, let's get some more questions.
We're liable to offend someone.
I apologize to the Legion of Floyd the Barber.
Howard McNear.
Some more questions. Jim, this one was sent to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com from Sean Wolfedden. I have been listening for about...
I'll bet you any amount of money that's not the way he pronounces it.
Wolfenden. I've been listening for about 3 years now and have asked several times politely about this question that still remains unanswered. How come Yokozuna... let me correct your grammar, Sean.
All right.
How come Yokozuna's team didn't win at WrestleMania to get Jim in the ring with Yoko for 5 minutes, as that was the stipulation?
Because they didn't want to give him 5 minutes with me.
Jim, he has asked this question politely several times. Can you please give us more?
Politely. I had actually, politely, all right. Actually, I had forgotten that stipulation was there. I also forgot who all was in the fucking match. Which match was that? God damn it.
I'm going to look it up.
It was 96 or 97? It was 96. Had to be. Or was it 95? I forget. You're looking this up now, right?
I am looking it up, and was it Yokozuna? Oh my God! Look at this match. I'm sorry.
I would have a better memory, but I lost some of my memory when this Italian chiropractor gave me an adjustment.
Did you watch that video
2 years ago? Not yet, but I just thought that might get another laugh out of you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll have more about this on a later time because Jim's going to watch this. Some of you know I like these chiropractor videos. I don't know why. I'm just weirdly amused by them. I want to go to a chiropractor after seeing them, but they all have their own, but they all have their own unique techniques From whistling to just yanking on you with a towel to scraping you.
Wait a minute, whistling? Did you get a masseuse therapist with Tourette's syndrome?
There is this guy with suspenders that whistles at the women.
I swear to God, now just real quick, before you talk about the Italian chiropractor, there's a woman that works at the Kroger deli at the meat slicer that has Tourette's. And I thought the first time I said, well, she just almost dropped that bag and jerked it right back up. And then I saw her make the same move about 5 times. Woo! Like that. You think they wouldn't put her on the meat slicer.
Did you ever see the Curb Your Enthusiasm episode? One of my favorites, the last episode of one of the seasons, where they're opening a restaurant and they lose their chef. And at the last minute, they get another chef who is highly regarded, but it's an open kitchen facing the whole room. And the chef is French and has Tourette's syndrome. So he's in there, he's like, cocksucker, motherfucker!
Piss out my ass. Cocksucker, he sounds like Brute Bernard.
Yeah, Larry says, why isn't he cursing in French? Why is he cursing in English?
But what about this Italian chiropractor?
There is this one chiropractor I recently discovered. I swear to God, I don't know how he advertises his service to the women over there in Italy. It must be, come here wearing nothing. It's basically the precursor to every porno you've ever seen or heard about. It's this guy, and he has these girls there wearing nothing, and he's just pushing on their ass and stretching their legs. Suzanne came in here when I was watching it. She thought I was watching porn. So I'm not watching porn at my desk in the middle of the fucking day.
Yeah, what's the matter with you? I'm not crazy watching porn. I'm watching Italian chiropractor videos.
But yeah, we'll have more about that later. But the match, Jim.
What? Oh, the match, yes.
WrestleMania.
Back to that. Cocksucker.
The British Bulldog, Owen Hart, and Vader with Jim Cornette defeating Yokozuna with Mr. Fuji, Ahmed Johnson, and Jake the Snake Roberts.
God damn, that's right. They brought Fuji back. And that was 96, right?
Is that Fuji's only ever babyface? I don't remember how many appearances he would have made when they brought him back there.
Has to be.
Right? He was never a babyface.
Yeah. And that was because we had turned on Yoko and beaten him up and cast him out, and there was several months. That's when we did the deal where Vader hurt him and they carried him out on a forklift, or was that later?
I think it may have been around that period of time. I don't know. Well,
but anyway, nevertheless, they didn't want to beat the heels. They didn't want to beat the heel team. They wanted my guys to go over, but the tease was that if Yoko's team won, he got 5 minutes with me. But his team didn't win, so I was safe as if I was in a baby's arms.
How often was that stipulation used in wrestling history without the payoff of?
Almost never.
Right?
That's what when I first heard, I was like, 5 minutes with Yoko? And well, don't worry, he's not going to get it. The only other time that I can remember was the Dynamic Dudes in the Midnight Express, when we must have done a month's worth of house show matches with them. And the stipulation was that if they won, they got 5 minutes with me, which people wanted to see because we fucked them around on TV. But because Shane Douglas had pissed Ric Flair off so bad, calling Herd and complaining about shit when he didn't have the status to do so, that fucking, and I was on the booking committee at the time also. So he said, fuck it. Just beat him. Don't give him the 5. I think like 2 or 3 times there was a DQ and they gave me a couple of bumps and then the boys ran in. But otherwise he just, fuck it. We'll just go over. We won't give it to him.
You know, that's one of the first moments, now that I think about it, as a child, because I was 9 in 1989, that I ever rooted for the heels, now that I think about it. When you turned on the dudes, I mean, the whole building popped.
And everybody else, too.
Everyone popped. But that's one of the first moments I could think of where I was like, the heels are the best. Because Flair was a babyface. But that was a great moment. Everyone loved you turning on the
Dynamic Dudes were as popular in fucking, what was that, in New York? Troy, New York.
The middle of nowhere.
The dudes were as popular as crotch rot in that building. And that was the most, I swear to God, that's the first time anybody's ever turned heel and could have been elected mayor of the town the next day. But we've mentioned part of that was because the people were just disgusted with seeing how the Midnight were being used. They're like, can they just ever win anything again? And then when we actually did something good, they're like, yeah, all right. Anyway,
Our next question, Jim, sent to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com from Jack. I used to watch TNA a lot and always thought that Tyson Tomko, or Travis Tomko, should have been a bigger deal.
Yeah.
I know there was stuff outside of the ring that hurt his chances, and I realized only today that you might have trained him. I'd love to hear your thoughts, if you have any on him, and I'm going to just throw my 2 cents in. I thought WWE had a moment when they had Tomko with Christian, where they really could have broken him out and done something with him. And
no, that was TNA.
No, he was with Christian first in WWE.
But they had one in TNA too.
Oh, I didn't even know about that.
Yes. I'm telling you, and here's the thing, and I did not train him. He was here in OVW. We trained him partially. He had already been a wrestler previously. He had already broken in, but he spent quite a bit of time. He was Travis Bane and Seven were the disciples of sin at one point. And the outside the ring issues that the caller or the writer mentions were not happening at this point. I don't know if a lot of people may not know this, but without going into sordid detail, Travis, a great guy. He had a great wife and kids, and he got a serious drug problem. And this was really, I think, after he was not wrestling on any kind of regular basis anymore, that he had issues, legal issues. And last I heard, he had turned things around and was doing better and well. And so anyway, and that's good because he was a good guy. But to the more important of the question, yeah, he had a great look, and he had a great aura about him with not only that look, but he looked dangerous. And he was like a Sean O'Hare that wasn't a fucking mental case and could work. He just looked like a dangerous guy that you didn't want to mess with. And there was a point in time, and I swear to God, I think it was with Christian. So they must have done the same thing, probably did, in TNA. Shitstain was booking, writing, whatever he called it at that point. And they desperately, the people in the Impact Zone started getting behind Travis and started cheering for him. And it was one of those deals where I don't know what your frame of reference is, whether anything from Diesel and Shawn Michaels to Plowboy Frazier and Jerry Lawler. They want the big guy to turn on the little annoying heel, right? And they start cheering for the bigger guy. And it was ridiculous in the Impact Zone to the point where they were chanting his name while he was the heel stooge. And I'm thinking, this is great. I've always thought he could really fucking get over. He'll have a good spot. They're obviously going to fucking go with this. And after several weeks of it, they did a big angle. And guess what the angle was? For fucking Tomko to goddamn switch all the way heel. He was going to really I can't even remember what it was. It made no sense. He did something to be full heel and support Christian, the guy that the people wanted him to turn on, and help him out and fuck somebody else that they liked instead, because they didn't expect that. And they also didn't want to see that, and it fucking killed him, and he was never the same again, and he never got over, and then it was off from there.
I remember one segment, I don't know, 2004, 2005, I don't remember. But I popped. It was one of the stupid segments, but I liked it. I believe Christian and Tomko backstage, I confronted Cena. And Christian was really good around this period of time in WWE. And he was going to rap for Cena. And he says, Tomko, give me a beat. And Tomko just goes, no. And that ended it. Like, he couldn't rap because he couldn't get a beat. Oh, it was one of the funniest things. But anyway, that was your thoughts on Tomko. Our next question, Jim, sent to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com from Chris in Sunderland, UK. Greetings from across the pond. Before my question, just wanted to say a big thank you for the many hours of entertainment during lockdown. Believe me, it's been very much needed. My question is regarding the multiple belt strap color changes, especially when Ultimate Warrior had the belt. First, the Intercontinental strap was its usual black, then white, then sometimes yellow, and I recall it sometimes being purple or blue. I also remember Shawn Michaels having a white strap when he was the IC champ. Do you know if this was something the Warrior asked for? I'm guessing so, since he also did it with the heavyweight title. I'm glad this trend did not stick around. So, Jim, it's not really about the Warrior as much as the idea of the belt having different color straps.
Well, I would be surprised if the Warrior had anything to do with that, because that wouldn't explain why Shawn Michaels had the white Intercontinental belt and blah, blah, blah. They were just, for that period of time, trying to reinvent the wheel like they do periodically. Remember when the spinning thing came in?
That's my least favorite.
Ridiculous, yeah.
Next to the current one where it's just a giant W, which looks awful.
Well, yeah, it looks like a fucking, Super Bowl ring or something. With just, that's rotten too, but they periodically would do that. And I remember, it's not unheard of. The original NWA domed globe belt, the 10 pounds of gold, that they got made for, it was originally originally it was going to be for Briscoe,
yeah.
But then the thing happened with Dory, the truck accident, and then Harley got in the middle as the transitional champion. But so did Harley ever wear it though, or they were getting it made?
Briscoe definitely got it when he beat Harley in Houston.
No, but that's what it was. They were getting it made, and the first title change didn't happen, and then Harley wore the one that Dory had, and then Harley was presented the new belt in the ring in Houston the night that Briscoe beat him for it. So Harley got to hold it for the pictures and then had the match and lost it.
I love that photo too. You know the photo.
Yeah.
Harley's on the ground on his knees with a look of shock on his face. His hands are on his head. And Paul Bosch, who wanted this title change so badly, is in the ring, looks like he's partying, has his arm around Briscoe, has one leg up, has a camera he's wearing. He looks like the happiest man in the world.
But anyway, it was not red leather. People have seen the pictures and think it was red leather. It actually wasn't. It was some type of a red, not pleather, not kind of a red fabric, kind of like felt or something like that was covering the belt. And because I remember Briscoe saying, I think maybe in his book or whatever, that after a few months it had gotten just rotten and stinky and whatever the fuck, and that's why they changed it. It wasn't red anymore. Then it was the same belt plates, but it was black after that. I always liked black leather because it makes gold or silver stand out more, and I always thought that the best wrestling belts were the ones that looked like they could be real. Like they, if it's got 5 diamonds in it, it might be real. If it's got 700, chances are they're not. I like the belts that looked like jewelry, that weren't, just Fisher-Price toy colors. And the same thing with the leather. I thought the bright colored leather was somewhat distracting, although I've liked the white on women's belts because that should be different. So it just depends, but that's, I think they were just trying a bunch of shit, see what stuck with all the colors. I don't think Warrior necessarily gave a shit. As long as he had the belt and the check, I don't think he cared what color it was. I may be wrong.
Our next question, Jim, sent on Twitter using the hashtag CornyDriveThru from Dan PB. AEW or ECW? Which would you rather spend an afternoon watching and why?
ECW. Just because, even though some of the lowlights of ECW would probably send me into a tizzy just like the AEW stuff did, but you still had major talents going through there. And for every, garbage match involving Ian and Axel Rotten or whatever, you had Malenko and Guerrero and you had the Pillmans, and they were still trying to be professional wrestling then. In some cases, just with no rules and everything turned up, but it wasn't like just completely sloppy work that nobody cared about and guys openly cooperating with each other and 27, different matches with the same shit in it. And so it was a more exciting and professionally done and actually believable bunch of chaos than what AEW has. There's several talents at AEW I'd love to see somewhere else because I like them, but as a whole on that show, no. if I was doing something for pleasure, I'd watch ECW first, but it would still, that's like saying, okay, I'm on a diet, but I'm going to have a low-fat Twinkie. I kind of cheated a little bit, but it was still a low-fat Twinkie. If I was going to cheat all the way on my diet, I'd watch fucking 81 Mid-South or whatever.
All right. Well, our next question, Jim, sent on Twitter using the hashtag CornyDriveThru from Joe Miles. Isn't the drive-thru due out tonight, or did I miss something?
Hey, it's free. It's free. And here's another thing. When's the last time we missed a show? Think about this.
Missed a show?
Yes, except for the regularly scheduled holiday intervals where we release our omnibus collections at Christmas and New Year's. Like, my God, you Simon Legree, Ebenezer Scrooge motherfuckers. We can't even get Christmas off. But we haven't missed an experience, I bet you, at least 4 or 5 years. Maybe since you've been involved, we skipped some drive-thrus in 2017 and maybe again in 18 or 19 when I had the ridiculous road schedule that I will never be doing again. And I just couldn't get back in town in time or whatever, but that was few and far between. So we've had a pretty good fucking track record here with not missing shows and putting them out. They may be a day or two late sometimes, but did I mention they're free? And also, we still do them 2 a week at this length for how long now? We're the Iron Men. They ought to call you Brian Gehrig and call me Jimmy Cobb. We're the Iron Men, baby.
I'm not sure you want to align yourself with Ty Cobb, but let's get our final question here.
Ty Cobb, Ty Conti, whichever tie you want to tie me to.
This next question is likely our last here on the show this week.
Well, I'll make sure it is.
This question was sent on Twitter using the hashtag CornyDriveThru from Kyle Scharf. Would more smart fans look upon Hulk Hogan more fondly had he ever done at least one clean job for Randy Savage or Bret Hart?
Probably. And this is one of the things where your average fan, and that's what Hogan was going for. He, envisioned himself, and to some extent he was a movie star and a mainstream celebrity and blah, blah, blah. So he doesn't really give a shit what, the average hardcore, diehard, whatever phrase you want to use, fan has to say about his record of doing jobs and putting people over. But I think that segment of the audience, yes, if there had just been that they could look back to say, well, he wasn't always greedy and about himself. But still, even then, for that segment of the population that has that viewpoint of Hogan, that it was always about him and he wouldn't put anybody over and et cetera, fuck, the Warrior took a bunch of that fucking heat off of Hogan, because at least Hogan could work and he would do business. He would show vulnerability and he would certainly sell, because a lot of people overlook the fact that Hogan selling until he was done selling, he would for almost anything, even if it looked half-ass weak, because that was the way you build sympathy, and he wanted sympathy for his comeback. Because the more sympathy, the bigger the pop on the comeback. It was all still about him, but he would work within the parameters of the business. And Warrior was just no. So that takes some of the heat off of him right there, just because they were together in the same place at the same time. But yeah, if he'd have put a Savage over just to keep the program going or give more credibility to a guy at that level, or Piper. Of course, Piper is the same way on the other side, but he knew he was never going to. Piper would have done a job for Hogan if he knew he was ever going to get it back.
And he knew he couldn't trust Hogan.
And he knew he couldn't trust him to get it back.
He wouldn't have had a problem with Flair or Steamboat or any of those guys, but Hogan, he knew there was going to be an issue.
He never had a problem with, it was a different time period, but he'd done jobs for fucking Flair.
The Bret Hart thing is always interesting to me because there are always stories about what the future plans were. Hogan loses the title to Yokozuna, a flash from a camera, a fireball hits him in the face and he's out. The story was always that he refused to work with Bret. He didn't want to work with Bret. You were there right after that. Right after Hogan left is when you came in. Were guys talking about that?
Not really. I got to be honest. What was that? That was WrestleMania, so that would have been April, right?
No, well, he left
Nope.
King of the Ring, so that would have been...
Oh, that would have been... No, it was okay, kid. That was June.
Yeah.
I was in the end of July. No, most people weren't mentioning his name. I mean, I didn't go in there and the first thing sit down and ask everybody, hey, how was Hogan? I didn't bring him up, but no, it wasn't like, oh gosh, we miss Hulk, or boy, the story when Hulk did this or whatever, or yeah, we're glad to get rid of Hulk. It wasn't anything. It just nobody was talking about him. It didn't come up. I mean, I didn't, eavesdrop on everybody's conversation, but I don't remember hearing anything other, one way or the other.
And Yokozuna's another one of these guys that there were rumors about in the mid-90s, late 90s, that Hulk Hogan wanted WCW to bring him in so he can get his win back. You remember hearing that?
I can believe that. Well, that's why they created the Renegade before they got the Real Warrior. They created the Renegade so that, Hogan could kind of sort of beat the Warrior, and some people might think that. But no, we heard that. I've heard that about a couple of people. Always get the win back, or whatever. But Yoko wasn't going anywhere at that point in time. But then, then by the time that he got so big, he couldn't.
Well, Jim, I lied. That wasn't the last question. This is
all righty.
Sent on Twitter using a hashtag CornyDriveThru. This question is from I Love Baby Girl Liv Morgan. I wanted to hear Jim's opinion on The Miz, or as it's spelled here, The Miss, playing in the celebrity softball game after the home run derby, despite being injured so he can't wrestle and being in a wheelchair on TV.
Wait a minute. What? He played in a softball game after a home run derby?
Well,
goddamn, did he stop by on the way over to the quilting bee or the lemonade stand? What the fuck?
I believe, and I don't watch, so I don't know for sure, but I believe Miz is right now doing something where he's in a wheelchair and he's injured on TV, but Major League Baseball every year around the All-Star Game does a series of events, including the home run derby and the celebrity softball game. It was taped, I believe, the day before the home run derby, but it aired after it. But it was taped the day before.
But he's supposed to be in a wheelchair on television, and he's out there playing softball.
That's exactly right, apparently.
Well, but here's the problem. He didn't just do that on his own. It had to be approved through the office. So, yeah, I mean, it's not like I could think much less of The Miz, but in this case, I can't knock him because they obviously reached out to the office and booked that, or it was approved by the office, or he wouldn't have been allowed to do it because he's a contract talent. So they're stupid. Now, if I was the promoter / booker and he was my guy on my TV and he was supposed to be in a wheelchair and he went and played a softball game, I would call him on the phone and say, I'm glad you got well because you're never coming back. You're fucking fired. You're fucking done. Goodbye. So long. Don't ever call me again. Lose my fucking number. But that's just me because I'd have been in the wrestling business. Since everything they do is phony and they don't give a shit, they told a guy that was on their fucking roster on their television that's in a wheelchair and injured to go out and play softball. So what do? You can't cuss the guy because you can cuss the office, but it'd be nice to have a specific name. I'm sure nobody even went to Vince McMahon and said, hey, some fucking celebrity baseball game wants The Miz to play, but he's crippled in a wheelchair on our TV, because then Vince would have said, well, get somebody else to do it then. But I'm just, they staff their office with people that have no wrestling background and act like they don't even watch the show. And then they do this shit because they think that it's all supposed to be a bunch of horse shit. So nobody even thinks twice about stuff like that. It's why the business side of the office had a lot of nice, polite, friendly people when I was working there. The consternation I had with a lot of them was they had no idea what was going on in the wrestling business. But now there's fucking hundreds more than there used to be, and they probably have even less idea and give even less of a shit. So But that's why those things happen.
WWE has always participated in, celebrity golf outings and celebrity softball games. You think they ever sent Lawler or Sid to any of the celebrity softball games? Or is it just like any wrestler that's popular as opposed to a wrestler that would actually go there and kick ass?
I wish they'd have sent fucking Lawler. That would, because King would love that, right? Whereas Sid, that would have been too nice to him. But, that's and then I hear, now that I say that, Miz could have mentioned, hey, I can't be going out and playing softball because I'm supposed to be crippled. But he probably wanted to, because he's a fucking reality TV fame whore or whatever, and probably wanted to be in the celebrity softball game. But all I can tell you is from personal experience, SummerSlam 93. They wanted me to go and be on Regis and Kathy Lee that morning for Yokozuna. He's in the main event with Luger. But 10 days previously, and I'd already told Bruce this, I said, I'm going to have a neck brace when I come into SummerSlam because we got our big show in Knoxville. Bob Armstrong's going to pile drive me. He's like, okay. So when they called me Regis and Kathy Lee, I said, well, I'm going to be wearing the neck brace. And they're like, okay, just go and talk. If I had not insisted on wearing the neck brace, or I didn't even have to insist. They knew I was going to do it or not do the thing, so I didn't have to insist. But if I hadn't brought it up, they wouldn't have had me wearing the neck brace because that wasn't their concern. Their concern was pushing SummerSlam. My concern was making Smoky Mountain Wrestling not fake bullshit. So I brought it up and they said, okay, do what you got to do. Miz could have said and talked him out of him being there, but I said, hey, how stupid are we all going to look if I'm supposed to be injured and crippled on television, but I'm out here playing softball? Get somebody else. But he's more about him and his fame and celebrity than actually taking any kind of care about the wrestling business. So we cuss both of them, the Office and the Frog Face.
The downpour continues and the drive-thru is closed. All right. Not bad.
All right.
You could hear Jim on The Experience when it debuts Saturday, wherever you find your favorite podcast. Whoa, more thunder in the background here. Action-packed episode even at the end.
It's God coming to get you.
And we'll be back next week here on The Drive-Thru, wherever you find your favorite podcast. Get access to classic episodes of The Drive-Thru and The Experience at patreon.com/Cornette. And of course, the official Jim Cornette YouTube channel is your home for clips, full episodes, and omnibus collections, all with the extremely popular and amazing Travis Heckel artwork. Check it out today, the official Jim Cornette YouTube channel. You can follow Jim on Twitter at @TheJimCornette. You can follow me on Twitter at GreatBrianLast. You can hear me on the 605 Superpodcast at 605pod.com. Available wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Don't forget about Cornette's Collectibles at JimCornette.com, which will be open again one day at JimCornette.com. The Drive-Thru is brought to you by the Law Office of Stephen P. New, 888-692-8084. Get even with Stephen and get revenge at NewLawOffice.com. But until Saturday on The Experience, and next week right back here on this amazing show, for Jim Cornette, I'm the Great Brian Last. Tally-ho!